Hey, everybody, it is your good friend, Dr. David Proden, from down here in the North Star recording studio where it is 63 degrees today. And actually, outside 2 days ago, it was 67 degrees and humid and windy and crazy. But now it's back down to a typical 30-degree December here in Wisconsin. And thank you for being here with me this morning. Friday, December 17th for the show. So, and morning to Juan, Mictobus, and Joe Dolio. Joe, hopefully those wins made it over to you yesterday and you were able to bring in your snow globe. But next year, buddy, keep it in mind, a 35-foot inflatable Grinch. Everybody would be like, that's the house where the Grinch is. So, yeah. That seems to be playing like nonstop right now, the Jim Carrey version, which I don't mind. So morning one from the Tenderloin in San Francisco. Mictobus, our friend on the East Coast. Joe Dolio holding down the state of Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. And for everybody else who will be having the show as an enjoyable accessory to their replay. A few things here. I was this morning when I had this set up, I'm getting used to the paid features of StreamYard. So I had the overlay for the previous show that I did Monday night, which was working at the school for the blind. And so that was coming up and I'm like, well, what's the deal? Like, I don't want to re-record this show. Like, that'd be a big, massive problem. And but I just realized it's just my background, so that's what I had going on. So yeah, this should change things just a little bit here. There we go. I do have the lighting off today because this is the more informal of the two shows, but let's get into this. Hey, so they already think I'm the Grinch the rest of the year, says Joe Dolio. I don't believe that, Joe. And by the way, I've been I've been proofing my book. So a few days ago, my publisher contacted me and said the first round of proofs are ready. So what happens is the publisher will go through the entire book, and then they put together what's called author questions, which ripping this document here, which I don't want to. Author questions, and then there are more author questions embedded in the document. So I have to go through, and it says like, note in figure caption has been treated as figure source. Hope this is okay. Sure, I'm pretty easy going on stuff like that. But it's going kind of line by line, word by word. But Joe Dolio is represented throughout the book, kind of the centerpiece, one of the stars. So, and now that I read it and it's all formatted, it's like even better. But I've been working on that. All 471 endnotes got approved, which is good. So this is mostly kind of formatting stuff, but it's like, so what they did is they said, log into our system and go in and the comments and the author questions and things like that, and then respond to them, make the changes. But that's a pretty tall task for the doc because I'm not used to that technology. So I have no idea what this. I've never seen this technology before. It's called Landstad, Lanstad. So I go in there and then I'm like having to learn it, and I'm like, just give me a PDF. Let me make the changes. That's how it was done in my first book, The Old School Times. But so anyway, it's kind of like this long process, and then the way that things are in their system aren't necessarily the way that things look on a page if you have graphics. So then there's this like rendering thing, and so anyway, I'm like, just get this through. And so I've been doing that the last couple days. So, but let's talk about face validity. What is face validity? Face validity is if you have a thermometer and it is reading, well, if it read 67 degrees 2 days ago here in Wisconsin, that would have been right. But let's say you have a thermometer, it's reading 88 degrees and it is snowing outside. It is just totally, it's like this. You're all, it's snowing outside. Thermometer's reading 88 degrees. You're shivering. And it's like, what's the deal? Well, something's not right because this thermometer is supposed to be measuring temperature, and obviously it's mistaken, right? There's some flaw um, in this thermometer, or there's another option: your senses are deceiving you. So the whole thing with face validity is does it seem to make sense? That's the thing. From your first reaction to it, does this make sense? Do I need to look into this more? There's something not quite right here. Does this make sense? So again, two things are happening. Either the tool that you're using to measure things, hey, we're measuring the economy with this tool and it's 2.1 inflation, and you're like, I just filled up with the gas and it was $5.08 a gallon. So does that make sense? Like, is the tool not assessing what it needs to do? Is something wrong there? Or is it my senses are crazy? Was I delusional when I was down at the gas station because of, whatever, but the gas fumes, right? Um, so if that's the case, if you are having a bad read on things, then you need a member check network. You need some other people around you. You need Joe Dolio, you need Juan, you need Mictobis, and you need to say, hey, what's happening over by you? Like, what's happening for weather and what's happening for mask mandates and things like this. So then when you get information from people you trust in different areas, that helps with your face validity. So it's an important term. It's so important, in fact, that I created this show, Friday Face Validity, because people tend to be headline skimmers. They just will make an entire argument based off of headlines. I think I shared this story before, but I was at a safety conference a few years ago, and a well-known safety expert, somebody that I know and respect, put together his introduction presentation on why, I don't know, his services or something were necessary. Again, I respect the guy. This was a weird presentation, the way to start this though. And here's what he did. He had about 2 minutes of headlines. Um, so they were just, headlines after school shootings, headlines after violence, headlines after natural disasters, just all of this, like newspaper, media, whatever. This clip, these multiple clips, right? They're just 2 seconds on each one, and then it's going through. So by the end of this, it's 2 minutes. You're just getting this flurry, and it's like, whoa, um, this is this this is overwhelming, right? And so his thing was, well, here's the reason why I need to work with your district, or here's the reason why you need to do this. And I'm thinking, that dude, that's just headlines. Like, that's not research. You just presented headlines, right? That you specifically selected these headlines. So I understand, like, if you would have come at it from an approach of like, here's what people are consuming on the media, right? Here's what they're inundated with, and here's their mindset when they receive this information. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to help you look behind the headlines and help you with people who are very nervous and can't be objective because of these headlines. It overwhelms them. I'm like, okay, that would have made sense. I would have been with you on that, but this other stuff, no, that was a little too much. So we do have a couple headlines today. So we have 4 headlines today. Let me bring them up over here. And the first one is actually a video. It was sent to me by our good friend Sassed One Too Many, who was a guest on the show, the Safety Doc, 2 weeks ago on a Monday. So, but Sass sent me a YouTube video from this person called Sal Mercogliano, or Mercogliano, Sal. So what is going on with shipping with Sal? And this is a channel. This is all Sal does. I don't know if it's all he does. I'm sure he does other things, but this is what the channel focuses on. So he talks about, how does cargo shipping work? And he builds like these Lego structures and things. He's been in the business, right? And he shows you how things get loaded, unloaded, how they kind of get broken apart, how certain shipments go to certain areas. And so what he was doing, what he did here is he said, his headline is, "We are drowning in empty containers." Okay. So let's look at a face validity from his show. So we're just going to have a few clips. Sal, don't strike me because I'm trying to get people to go over to your channel. Um, but we are drowning in empty containers. So on the last few Face Validity Fridays, we've talked about boats, right? Cargo boats that have been out in the port of LA. And then they kind of just move out into international waters, so they don't get counted anymore. It's this whole thing of how many boats really are there and what's happening with that. So let's look at this from this face validity of, is it an issue, or could it be an issue of empty containers? Could that be kind of this bigger driving issue of what's happening? There's other factors too. So let me bring this up for here. So I have three screens in front of me. And all right, so yeah, we're going through a commercial over here. So again, Sal devotes his channel to this. So let me bring it up, and I'm going to change this over here. Share, share screen, share screen, share screen, share screen. Okay, so here we are. This is his YouTube. This is his YouTube channel. And then here it is. We are drowning in empty containers. What's going on with shipping? It's 14 minutes, 52 seconds long. Of course, we're not going to watch the whole thing. But this is from Sal, who is an expert in this area. And I'm not going to bring over some audio in this, but I am going to show you what he did here. Is he built his right there. He built his little Maersk line ship, his cargo ship. Then he has the containers, which are Legos on here, and he's talking about how this stuff gets unloaded. So let me do the summary of here what he is talking about. So again, we're looking. One thing I didn't realize is that the containers are not universal. So he mentioned there are 5 types of containers. Then also certain, like Maersk will ship and they'll carry Maersk containers, but they won't carry other containers. So these aren't interchangeable, which is one thing. So he's getting at this deeper argument of saying, okay, let's talk about this in a just-in-time manufacturing environment where we didn't have a lot of warehouse space, where things would come off of a boat or out of a factory or whatever, might be staged somewhere shortly, and then it gets distributed. So there isn't this big warehouse like there would have been back maybe in the 50s, 60s, even 70s into 80s. And the fact is, now he's saying we're having a lot of these containers ending up at the warehouses, and the warehouses aren't meant to unload at a high rate on these things, right? They were meant to have a steady stream of these containers coming in, and that worked for many years. But suddenly, when you bring a whole bunch of containers there, you're having to set them outside. They don't have space for them. They don't have the loading docks equipped for like this many containers. So they kind of unload them at the dock when they can, and then they put the empty containers to the side. And the problem is then for the truck drivers, as Sal is saying, the truck drivers counted on a more reliable schedule of dropping something off and then like picking one container up and things like that. But now it's like they can drop something off, but then there's not a container there to pick up because things haven't been unloaded. So he said this is really like a distribution center issue with the way that these things now, once they're coming off and being rushed in, the distribution centers don't have the capacity because they were never meant to house these things, and they were never meant, the modern ones, to do this in such rapid succession. So I'm going to leave out of there right now, and then we're going to get into some points that I have from Sal's video. So it's pretty cool to make a boat like that and to do the diagrams and stuff. That's a cool video. We might come back to it. So a few things from face validity. Face validity, we have been told, right, that all of these boats are waiting out there to unload things. So some of that's, we know that there are boats out there because we've talked in previous shows and we've cited screenshots of where boats are located, so we know that they're out there. But it's not solely from a face validity standpoint. If you say it's just that these boats can't unload stuff fast enough, there's this other side of it, and the side is that if they unload things and they're coming in, that the distribution centers then or the warehouses are saying we can't process this stuff this fast because again we were never designed to do kind of this backlog of things that was meant to be just in time coming in, getting off, and whatever. So we're used to getting 10 trucks a day at this one warehouse, and now suddenly we're getting 20, we're getting behind, and these things are stacking up. And then and so another thing is, like, if you're a truck driver and you're hauling a Maersk container and there's other containers, and there might be empty containers, but they're not yours, so you can't take that container back. So that's another thing, is there's a lot of proprietary stuff with this, which Sal gets into. So from a face validity standpoint, there's more to this, right? There's regulation, meaning the shipping container stuff isn't standardized, which it probably would make sense to have that standardized. From a competitive edge, though, like, you wouldn't want all of this standardized. You'd want to try to have some proprietary aspects of these containers. So looking into this more, I found, there's not a lot of regulation in this, even how they fit onto certain semi haulers. Like, that's not completely universal. You can't switch that out, trains and things like that. So has to work with certain cars and things like that. There's also restrictions on empty containers at the Long Beach port, LA Long Beach port. So one of the big ports. They don't want these empty containers there. And Maersk, let's say they don't have a Maersk ship in port right now. So if they don't have a Maersk ship and someone is coming in with some Maersk containers, they'd be like, well, we don't have room for this, and we don't have a ship that's going to take these, so you can't drop them off here. So, like, that's a whole other part that's going on with this. So before I keep going, I want to again thank everybody. I want to thank everybody, and please subscribe to the show. Give a thumbs up here for the doc. I would appreciate that. I will appreciate that. Subscribe and thumbs up. I think as of this morning, so I've been tracking it here. So as of this morning, 945 subs, which is up from 880 a week ago. And so everything's heading in the right directions. And I think the big thing will be watch hours. I need 4,000 watch hours to be monetized. I have 1,732. So that needs to keep going up. If you're thinking of, like, hey, I want something to listen to in the background as I'm putting up the Christmas tree and wrapping presents, you're like, it's going to be an episode of the Safety Doc in the background. Maybe interviewing Larry Lawton or Nikolai Razavayu talking about biking next to Chernobyl or things like that. So yeah, I think we are on pace to hit 1,000 by Christmas, which is one of the two steps there in monetization, and the other one is getting at 4,000 views. So we're keeping up in that direction, I guess. So hey, subscribes and thumbs up. And by the way, like, my microwave still starts when I open it. So, and the microwave dude is supposed to be, hey, thank you, Solitude Surfer, saying love the show. The microwave guy is supposed to be here, literally like a mile from my house where I bought the appliances. And he's like, hey, like, I stopped there yesterday. I'm like, this is happening. Oh, it's a switch thing. Like, it's not uncommon. We'll come over next week. So I call yesterday, like, nah, I haven't got you on the schedule yet. Like, all right. But every time I open this thing, like, it's a real fast maneuver to get stuff in and out. So, yes. So going back with these shipping containers, some ports will only unload small blocks of containers. So remember, we saw that whole boat. So it's not like the whole boat gets unloaded. Like, part of the boat might get unloaded, and then it goes somewhere else and goes somewhere else. So it's really weird. But what's changing now too is the boats, like especially on the West Coast, seem to be like dumping all of their cargo in one area because it's been there so long. Instead of like multiple ports that they initially might have scheduled. This is per Sal. I watched the video. They are just like they're dumping everything there. So then you're having to coordinate transportation and truck and all of this. And again, when you bring back these empty ones, it is if they won't even let you in if you have a empty cargo container and they don't think they're going to have a ship to take it out. They're like, we're not stacking these things. We don't have the room for it. Again, this whole so the phase validity of this is part of this issue is legislation, not standardization, and also just-in-time manufacturing, which worked very well until right now in a lot of things, where just-in-time isn't working. And it's weird because we're kind of transitioning from just-in-time to 3D printing. Like my friend Flying Rich, if you watch his channel, and he 3D printed the parts for his pool cleaner, which was this old thing, and he was managed to CAD design the parts and print them and get everything to work. So we're in this transitional phase. So Sal is so from a phase validity standpoint, we're drowning in empty containers. Absolutely right. So this from Sal is right on the money. And so yeah, thank you so much, for Sassed for putting that out there. I'm going to put a link right here. So there we go. Or put it in the chat. So yeah, what's going on with shipping? So I never knew that about the containers. So that one, they weren't standard because and he said, what you see on the back of a semi isn't the same container that's necessarily coming off the ship either. Like those are much bigger, and then they're kind of broken down. And this reminds me of when I was interviewing Katie Pashon, and we were talking about Cajun Navy relief and like the Bahamas. When the Bahamas get hit by a hurricane, the problem was you couldn't fly in like a big plane with supplies because the airport had been damaged. So you can only get in smaller planes. Well, all of these pallets of supplies were meant to go on bigger planes. So you had to individually break down these pallets into smaller, pallets and things like that. It took a lot of time. So it wasn't the fact that you didn't have the supplies necessarily. It was the fact that to transport them in traditionally in these big planes just wasn't going to work. And it took time then to break things down into inventory, and like things were, not all stacked in all together. So if you needed certain things, catheters from a pallet, that was one thing, right? You had to like find it in the middle of the pallet, move it over to a smaller shipment that could fly in. So Joe wrote, I fixed that microwave issue here by unplugging it, leaving it unplugged for 30 minutes and plugging it back in. So I don't know, man, I'll try it. I did unplug it. I think so. The thing was, I went online and I did a Google search because I'm trying to see what's going on. And a lot of people were coming up with this issue, and it's the sensors in the door. So it seems like a pretty reasonable fix, but like you have to have the parts to do it and stuff like that. I don't know who would design a microwave that would somehow fail to the point where when you open the door, the microwave starts. Like I can't get over that. I'm like, this is how would you not have a fail safe on this where if something went bad with the switch, then it just didn't run? Like versus, this episode of The Simpsons where the house is all radiated and stuff like that. It is our good friend Carl. So he is stating that shipping is being artificially crippled. So I think the more that we look at these pieces of what is happening with shipping, it does get very interesting. So from a phase validity standpoint, also, what do you hear? What have you been hearing on the news? And put it down below. Thank you already for the 10 thumbs up, which means I need coffee. So, all right. Lady in front of me at the register, she bought many boxes of donuts from the gas station, and then she just grabbed this big stack of gift cards because obviously, like, it was her day to contribute to the holiday Christmas thing wherever she works. And then she's probably like, "Oh, I need to get people something." So she probably just like, I don't know. I think she's like, put $10 on every one of these. So nothing like getting up in the morning and being like, "Here's how I'm doing the Christmas stuff for my coworkers." Thankfully, I work for myself here, and it's just me. So this is bought myself this cup of coffee. Hell of a boss I got. All right, that's pretty good too. They were cleaning a couple of machines, so when I went in there, I'm like, "Oh God, hopefully not the one that I like." But no, it wasn't. Welcome to Wiz Division, the return of Captain Blue Wrench and his wacky podcasting adventures. Yes, when I'm over in the Eric Clary show, I am Captain Blue Wrench because oftentimes when I'm in there, I'm the only blue wrench around. All Pro Lemonton, hey buddy, um, I gotta, here's where I kind of get into this late. The return of Captain Blue Wrench, you bet. Thanks, buddy. Cat All Pro Lemonton. I've been hearing about the threats in Michigan, something like 50 kids being charged. So yeah, those I think you're talking about all of the additional social media threats about school, different events of school harm, typically like school shooting threats. So I saw that this morning. I think I saw 4 different instances where, yeah, screenshots of images from social media that kids had posted, allegedly kids had posted, who knows, or that had been posted, right? So, um, Carl, when you remove useless restrictions, the world can go round. No kidding, huh? So, our first article there was what is going on with shipping with Sal, and again, let's take a look here at Sal. So there he is. So imagine that's your office, and you're building this. You have the ship, and you put your Legos on. This guy's really good. I appreciate this, and thank you for Sassed one too many. So again, and he said, um, if you need something and it's like way down, it takes a while, right? To to unload these things, and all of this stuff is it's meant to operate very efficiently. So when you have a backlog at the warehouses, simply because the infrastructure at the warehouse is meant for just in time, not meant to be kind of flooded at once with where with shipping stuff. And then, like he said, this gets empty, and you might have sorry, it's low humidity down here. You might have containers that come into port, right? You might have a whole stack of containers that are these empty containers, but they're not Maersk. They're other brands, and you could tell by the colors, like how they paint them, I guess. But so this boat could leave, and it could leave empty, and it's not taking other empty containers with it. So that's why this is happening. So phase validity, will we have a standardization in shipping containers? I don't know, but we don't hear about this on the news, right? It's just, oh, there's all these boats, they're docked out there, they're waiting to come in and stuff like this, and it's like, well, whatever. So um let's see here. Okay, Aaron Clary keeps ignoring my request to make me a damn blue wrench. He clearly hates. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Who's the vision? Take that up with Aaron. So it's I covet my blue wrench status. So I never went for the Twitter check, and because I didn't pay enough attention to it back when it was easier to obtain, and because I had been on PBS and some stuff like that, I'm sure I would have had a good shot of getting it versus now. I'm not going to go through all the hoops too. I checked into that, and you have to have so much on this ongoing basis of like, work and contribute it, and these other sources, and this volume of fans and stuff like that. I'm like, nope, not going to happen. Mictobus, if you're talking about that TikTok thing, apparently it's nationwide. Seeing reports that everyone is getting the same letter from this. Oh my God, that is so bad. So what Mictobus is referring to is if these school threats have become a TikTok challenge, and now they're being copycatted, yeah, this is going to significantly impact schools, because schools need to investigate every threat. And yeah, this is wow. Okay. Wisdom Vision saying, literally bought everyone I know gift cards already. I look forward to being the most hated person. Small price to pay for stress-free minimalism. Yeah. So one of my daughters I took her shopping for Christmas, and she's like, I've got everything picked out. And I'm like, okay. And she's pretty thoughtful. So we went in and she just bought gift cards. So, and I was like, oh, I didn't know this was your plan. Like I thought you had other things in mind. And so I didn't want to say, well, let's like rethink this. Or I was like, okay, we'll go with it. But then trying to be like, well, especially where we're at, there are some options we have for smaller retailers. And let's think this out a little more if we can have a combination versus supporting these mega giant corporations and things like that. And plus, like the gift card thing, I know where you're going. Like, I know, and she's young. So, but I was like, oh, if I would have known ahead of time. But in the moment, I didn't want to say, like, nope, we can't do that. So, need to validate though. Wife got the email. I didn't. Okay. Um, all right. And let's see here. Port Newark, New Jersey from Carl. A standard container ship takes 4 to 5 hours to unload. Yep. And so again, and then we'll move on from this. Thank you so much. And keep putting into the comments. You've been putting stuff in the comments, and I've been responding. I've enjoyed that. What Sal is saying is that a couple of things are changing. Because these boats have been out for so long, they're dumping all of their stuff if they can, because if it stays on there longer, especially things like shoes and clothing, the desiccates that are put on there to absorb the moisture, or electronics, they're reaching their capacity. So the stuff is just going to be ruined anyway. So then they're dumping it, and then they're having to scramble to get it transported. And what he is saying, it's not necessarily a shortage of truckers. It's a shortage then of containers and the type of trailers that haul these containers, because things are getting backlogged at warehouses. And then, again, so he said, imagine you'd go to a warehouse, you drop off your Maersk container, and then there'd be an empty Maersk container that would go back on your truck that you'd take back. You'd put it in the port, and the port would have a Maersk ship that would be there very soon. And then they would swap it out and it would go onto that. So that system's all kind of messed up right now. So I think the bigger thing is, it comes back to that just-in-time manufacturing. Hey, it is our good friend, Swamp Dog Armory. Hey, thank you for stopping by and hitting that like. So yeah, I am taking, not really taking a break because this is a scheduled show, but I need to get back after the show into editing the proof for my book. Again, in a system which I am not familiar with, Landstead. So imagine you're on a plane and they're like, okay, like you fly it right now. Like, ooh, I'm not sure. Not used to this. So, all right. So that was our first article. Let's get over here to number 2. And number 2 is from CBS 4 not Minneapolis, Minnesota, where Aaron Clary used to live, by the way. So, yes, where Aaron Clary used to live. So CBS 4 Minnesota, and it says pandemic fuels Salvation Army bell ringer shortage. So, all right, pandemic fuels. So, first of all, let's take a look at this article. I set this up a little bit different over here on the side screen, so which is okay. All right, so here we go. Add to stream. All right, so this again is from CBS 4 Minnesota. Used to be Aaron Clary's favorite channel. He'd be like, hey, Dave, CBS 4 is on right now. I'm like, okay. And then he'd be watching it. I'm like, how about NBC 7? He's like, never. So I'm not going to show the video. I don't know how the strike thing would go here. Well, let's show part of the video. So Bell ringer. All right. So right here, he's like, hey, what's happening here with the bell ringer thing? So Bloomington, Minnesota. It's the sound of the holidays. The Salvation Army's kettle campaign has been raising money for people in need for more than a century, but this year, shortage of bell ringers is leaving 20,000 hours unfilled. This is in Bloomington. Um, so, yeah, there aren't as many people signing up to bell ring, but I gotta say, it is one of the safest volunteer opportunities out there. You can mask up. It's contactless, a volunteer experience. So, so anyway, here's the deal, right? Salvation Army is down on bell ringers. And this, so from a face validity standpoint, I have seen this. Yeah, I see up above here the closings delays. Some schools have classes closed. So let's give credit. This is Kirsten Mitchell, December 13th, 2021. So here's what I have found from face validity for this. So I went to my local stores yesterday, and such as a Walgreens and Walmart. Walmart did not have any Salvation Army at all. Like nothing, no bell ringer, no pot, nothing. At Walgreens, here's what they had. They had the tripod set up in front. So as you go in and have the tripod, but there was no pot hanging from the tripod. But what was hanging there was a sign. It was more affixed than kind of just hanging there. And it said, thanks for your donation. Please text this number to donate money. So I was like, whoa, like no one's going to do that, right? Like there's nobody who is going to, and this number is like 849ZX1LS5H52. But it was crazy. So I'm like, okay, our face validity here is our title: Pandemic Fuels Salvation Army Bell Ringer Shortage. Face validity. Is there a shortage? I talked to other people in my network too. Yeah, they're saying there are fewer bell ringers out there, or there aren't bell ringers. But here's something else. As Mictobus pointed out, pandemic fuels. I don't think so, right? I don't think this is because of the pandemic or solely because of the pandemic. The Salvation Army had made some statements, political statements recently. So I think that is contributes to this more significantly than pandemic. So I would look at this and say, from a face validity standpoint, the shortage is authentic. The rationale for the shortage is incomplete, if not probably inaccurate. So yeah, that is, so this is something known, and we talked about this last week here. This is known as a Loki. So here we go with our Loki. So those of you following along here with our in our Loki area here, Loki, L-O-K-I, Loki. So right here, Loki. So Loki is a Norse god, and Loki basically is a Norse god who would go around and be mischievous and trickery and all of that. So yeah, you get home and house burned down. Oh, it was a Loki playing a trick, right? So Loki is basically this excuse. So the pandemic being blamed for smash and grabs at stores, right? It's the Loki. It's the pandemic. It's not the policies of, hey, if you take anything under $1,000, we're not going to prosecute you. Plus, some of the stores, like Apple stores, that say we won't even call police. It's our policy until 10 minutes after a theft has occurred. Well, whatever. So this is a Loki. CBS 4 has chosen to do the Loki on this, of saying with their headline, "Pandemic Fuels Salvation Army Ringer Shortage." It should have accurately, the most accurate face validity, as Mictobus and as we're pointing out here, is that their Salvation Army um, encounters bell ringer shortage. Like that would have been, or struggles with bell ringer shortage. That would have been an accurate face validity headline. They're trying to low key it here to help out the Salvation Army. So part of it's right, part of it's wrong. Um, so let me see what else I went, there was something else that I thought was interesting. Um, I went to prospect.org and let me see. I don't know how many words this is, if I can put this in here or not. Let's try it though. I think I can. Why not, huh? Okay. So per prospect.org, membership records of such diverse organizations as a PTA, Elks Club, League of Women Voters, the Red Cross, labor unions, and even bowling leagues show that participation. I got cut off here. Show that participation in many conventional voluntary associations has declined by roughly 25% to 50% over the last 2 decades. So our friend, Agorizer, still low key over here. Got to be low key. Welcome, buddy. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for the 15 thumbs up for the watch hours, keeping this show on to inform you, helping the doc get the watch hours to monetize this channel. It is a good thing. It's a Christmas miracle, for goodness sakes. Andrew S., let me do my job. Just leave me alone. So the other part of this bell ringer shortage is like this whole thing of kind of help the civic mindedness of people is dwindling. Luke Risner did a short podcast last night. You might know him as the Cincinnati Piper. And he was talking about this. Again, it was maybe like a 30-minute show. And he's about how VFWs, Lions Club, JCs, these organizations are just dwindling or they're gone. In the town that I grew up in, 1,200 people had a thriving Lions Club and JCs and Knights of Columbus. All those are gone now. They built a park by the river that went through my town. It's still there today. Really nice park. But so the other part of this is if you want to go deep into the story about shortage, I think the other part of this then would be of talking about general civic organizations or organizations in general in communities, which Rotary, stuff like that, have lost numbers. And why is that? Well, people are, I don't know, if they don't have enough time, they're not prioritizing it. People are moving more often, so they're not kind of vesting in a community. People are getting together online versus in real life. So there's a bigger part to this. So let's go on to our third one. This is from Breitbart. And this has, but first here, let's check out our chat. No, where's the vision? Bell ringer shortage. Your rules are, oh my goodness, Carl, you are feisty this morning. We got to get you the decaf coffee. So, yeah, I remember it wasn't that long ago, the Salvation Army being, the bell ringers being, like people kind of doing caroling when you went in, and then you do some kind of donation, and they'd give you, the store would donate, like candy bars or something, and then like they'd give you a candy bar as your kid or something like that. And I don't know. It's not like that anymore. Like it was just maybe 5-6 years ago. But there's real cold, weird feeling to everything now. But anyway, let's see. Participation's down. Okay. So here with Breitbart. Agorizer. You can bowl in You can bowl in our league, but you must do this and that. Carl H. Yeah. I bowled in a league in high school. Actually, we won first place. I got rid of the trophy a year ago. So, hey, here's Luke's channel. Thanks, Mictibus. Yeah. So Luke had a nice one last night, the Cincinnati Piper. He does these shows frequently from his garage, and it just has a nice ambiance. He wasn't doing his tobacco and his pipe last night, but it's just a really relaxing chill. Luke's a really low key, intellectual guy, so that was a fun one. I stopped in last night for a couple minutes. I saw it pop up. I had, like I said, some other things, but I opened my doors. 31 houses, 31 problems. This is sad. All Pro Lemonton. I've seen the same thing with our volunteer fire department. They're begging for help. Yes. Same thing here. We have a paid fire department, and then also paid on-time volunteers. So in my community, I think we have 6 full-time firefighters. And I mean, the signs are up all over the place. And it's not just like the sign that goes up for a month and then they take it down. They're like permanent signs now. Please, volunteer and we'll pay all the training but in the small towns, people, it is increasingly difficult, and these fire departments are having to shut down or combine and things like that. Being a former firefighter, some of that is training, that there are much more training required and refreshers and things like that. And people don't have the time. So they've also moved some of the training online. A friend of mine who's getting his firefighter certification has said, yeah, like it's weird because I'm taking part of this online and I'm like, all of my stuff was in person or like in-person classrooms. So, but yeah. So here's our third one. So we're halfway through. So thank you, everybody, today. And thank you so much here for the thumbs up. And just as a reminder here, little promo on the Showmo is dun 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 dun. Right here. Okay. So School of Errors is the most honest book ever written about the $3 billion school safety industry. Comes in hard copy, also ebook. And this is out places that sell books. It's been out for a few years. But especially now, right? If you're a parent, if you know someone who's a parent, if you're a taxpayer, but wanting to understand how schools assess threats, and also how vendors push this massive fortification mentality onto schools where the dollars actually get spent. This is the book that is going to kind of unveil all of that. And it's probably going to validate some things that you've been thinking about, and other things you're going to read and be like, oh my God, I had no idea that was happening. But yeah, School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America. It is a book that right now, with things that are happening in schools, I noticed, the book is selling again, but yeah, it is a very thoughtful, and it's very punchy. Like I didn't hold anything back. I was a school administrator and I've researched this, so we got right into the heart of it. So thank you, and thank you. Our number 3 here again is Breitbart. President refuses to extend student loan relief. Here we go. Let me bring the article up, and then Carl, you have a comment that I want to get to. So Breitbart. Bart. All right. This is loading. Okay. Here we go. Anna, here we go. This is President Biden refuses to extend student loan relief. All right. And this is from Hannah Blue, December 14, 2021. The article says, President Biden has no plans to extend student loan relief, with payments slated to return beginning February 1st. Additionally, the White House has not offered any plan to forgive student loan debt, a major agenda item of the far left Democrat caucus, which the Biden administration has ignored. Okay. A little positionality in this, right? So, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki, an interesting gal, last week, the president has no plans to extend student loan relief, which began under President Trump last year due to, Chinese, and considering mandates restrictions. All right. The forbearance period for student loans ends January 31st, 2022. So face validity, let's check this out. Just looking at the headline, President Biden refuses to extend loan relief, which means I need coffee. Refuses. What do you think here from face validity? WandaVision. I want to say WandaVision. I've seen the show. WisDivision, what do you think? WisDivision saying no student loan relief for the lazy. Okay. Pay your debts like I did. Wow. I'm not sure. That's a different take on it. Okay. No student loan relief and best decision Biden ever made. Okay. So President Biden refuses to extend student loan relief. Refuses. That's definitely a biased term, right? This was only initially designed to be temporary during the strife of the pandemic. If you extend this, then basically it would be extended perpetually, right? There would be the obvious argument to just continue extending it. So from a face validity standpoint, this is trying to stir people up. It's not accurate that this was ever meant to be more than a temporary thing when it was initially introduced, right? Even then, that was kind of sketchy. So, so from a face validity standpoint, he's not refusing. It just expires right now, right? I mean, it's like saying, Roger Goodell refuses to extend NFL season. Well, no, it's 17 games. It doesn't, we're not going to get to the 17th game and he's going to be like, hey, there's, people want like 20 games. Fans want 20 games because a year ago they couldn't be in the stadium, stuff like that. So, this is all positionality. From face validity, this was something that was set to expire. It needs to expire. If you were to continue perpetually extending things like this, where you didn't, this forbearance on loan interest, it would just go forever, right? It basically would be a de facto default by the government or just wiping off the books. This reminds me so much when I was an administrator and teachers would come up with these plans for students who were struggling, right? Or were behind on assignments. They'd say, okay, instead of here, we've got 4 assignments and you missed the assignment due in the second week. So as long as you get it to me by the end of the semester, that'll be all right. And then they get to their 5th week assignment and that's not in. Teacher says, don't worry, get it to me by the end of the semester and it'll be okay. Then they missed the 7th week. Same thing. Teacher's like, all right, just by the end of the semester, make sure you turn everything in. Then it gets to be a day before the end of the semester and the student's like, hey, like I've got 4 assignments that now I've got to do and I'm overwhelmed and I can't take this and all that stuff. And so the teacher's like, well, maybe we can do an extension or we can do. No, you can't do that because things are due. There are finite times when things are due. I have bills that are due that I have to pay. My property taxes I just paid, right? I can't just say, well, I'm going to send this back to you with a note of saying, I need these extended because of whatever. So you're not doing anybody a favor by extending this out. You want people to get back into their routine and with their money to budget for these things. So again, from a face validity standpoint, this is, and also what's the political motive in this, right? This was proposed, this initially came about during the onset of the pandemic. So I get that. But I'll be very interested to see, and let me go back here to my notes. Um, I am going to be I'm going to be watching. Is this going to resurface at the midterm elections? So, and if so, then this is a political ploy, which maybe it already was. But so that's the thing, or is this going to be, idled now and then brought up um, as a political fishing lure for the next presidential campaign? Will this be one of the big things? Although, like, I don't see that you're going to get a big sway of people on this whole student loan forgiveness thing. But maybe, I don't know, maybe it's going to be one of your platform things. So they're saying, don't bring it out now. Like, don't use all of this up right now. We need some of this magic stuff that we can pull out and use for the midterms and for the next presidential election. So, again, from a face validity standpoint, um, the president is not refusing a student loan relief plan that was put into place is now expiring. So, um, Joe Dolio saying he didn't refuse. Right. Right. So that's, and Joe, and this is one thing, like, so Joe's so dialed in with indicators and very carefully analyzing the language of things, of saying, well, where's the positionality on this? You just see it in his works, really thorough with it. And that's the thing, right? People hop from headline to headline. So if you had 10 people just coldly read this headline and then ask them, what do you think about this? Like, probably most of them are going to say, well, this is unfair. Why is he refusing to do this? He's not keeping his promise and stuff like that. And it's like, and then it's, you compare that to the facts, right? This was set to expire, and it was actually before he was president. So, that this initially came into play and things like that. So, again, think of the craziness if, NFL fans approached Robert Goodell, the NFL commissioner, and said, "Hey, 17 game season, no way. Like, the season's not going to, and we want 20 games. We were season ticket holders. We didn't get to go last year because our, whatever stadiums were closed. So, you're refusing to extend the season." Well, no, but people get into this. They get so locked into this and their positionality, and then they try to get angry. And so then if you're on the one side of this where you are making an argument, oh, like, we need to extend this. Well, yeah, don't fall for it. Safety doc friends here. Thank you. So let's go over WisDivision Productions. I'd like that graphic, by the way, too. I mean, in all seriousness, people have plenty of time to get their loans under control. Yeah, I mean, there are bills that people have to pay, rent, things like this. And you have responsibilities. You have priorities on how you will use your income. And if you need to work additional jobs or change your sources of income, people can do that, right? There are signs all over the place. I mean, I for years, like, I had friends who worked seasonal Christmas stuff in my area to pick up some extra cash, or like in summer, there's water parks 20 minutes away. And, even adults would work and drive some of the boats and stuff like that and pick up, some cash that might be paying off their property taxes by working in the summer and some stuff. But you're, as WisDivision is pointing out, and the common sense of this is, you're doing nobody a favor by perpetually kicking this down the road. And as a school administrator, I always had that discussion with teachers who tended to be like, oh, you missed a deadline, as long as it's in by the end of the semester. Then at the end of the semester, you have angry parents who are coming in and they're like, now my kids got all these assignments due and they have 2 days to do them and they're stressing out and stuff like this. And the teacher's like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, well, you should have never extended these things. Like, maybe as a one-time, whatever, something can be done, but not this perpetual thing of just saying, oh, like, get it done. I even had one teacher and he was saying, Well, yeah, if I have the student the next semester, I will give them an incomplete, and then I'll let them work on it the next semester and complete it. I'm like, so you're having them doing last semester's work plus the current semester's work, plus this is a student who typically isn't reliable at getting work done. I'm like, do you see the problem with that, buddy? I don't know. They didn't. How about we offer rewards for student debt repayment instead? So is the vision. That's interesting. Like that there would be s- I this I think there's merit to that. Some incentive program that I'm with. I don't know what that would look like, but I think there's some merit to that, right? Or maybe if you pay back so much, then yeah, you get a tax break or something, right? Not saying like that's it. I don't have this right. You just came up with it. I don't know if this is exactly worked out, but some incentive on that. Um, or maybe it positively reflects over to your credit score, and there's some correlation there that would be a boost. But yeah, I think there's ways to as WisDivision, as you've pointed out, there are ways to reward responsible, positive behavior. Now, people say, yeah, but people are these circumstances, whatever. Right. But when you can go out and get jobs pretty much, everywhere right now, um, this is prioritization. So yeah, it's a really novel. It's a good idea. I know there's these loan forgiveness programs. If you've worked so long and in an area or something. If you're a doctor and you've worked 2 years in the inner city or something like that, I don't know. I'm kind of like I'm on the fence with some of those. I'm not. I think those two have been expanded out a little bit generously, I guess. Andrew put to Joe Dolio, breaking news: High Tech and High Point are merging. They'll call the company High Tech. You darn right they will. You get a bonus sum of money put into your bank account for successfully paying down your loans. Positivity will be incentive to stop being lazy with your finances. So I like the bonus thing. I like that idea. Yeah, I do. So that's cool. That's good thinking. Um, Bye, New Bueno. Well, welcome. And if you haven't subbed to the channel, please do so. Been holding off my loan to see if they get free money. Not much, but do not want loss for being responsible. Laugh out loud. Then again, inflation going to eat most of the loan anyway. Yeah. So your point is well taken. So, I mean, if you have a loan, right, and you're a student, even if you're, let's say, responsible, you're planning to pay it back, there is a part of you right now which is probably like, well, I'm going to watch and see what happens. They gave this loan for, we've heard loan forgiveness a lot from the Democrat platform. We've seen, the suspension of interest payments. So, like, if I jump in now and make my payments, and then, you know, 2 years from now on the campaign trail, there's this big push to forgive everything. And then I'm not getting the money back that I paid in for my loans. Like, you know, so there is this thing too, because it's that people are very indecisive right now with these types of headlines, right? Because they're like, well, is there a chance that President Biden then is going to not refuse? Because he generally doesn't seem like the type of person that refuses things. Like, so so yeah, so and your other part is resonating too, but inflation, right? So you took out a student loan for $50,000, and $50,000 might fill up your car tank, or tank of gas in another 3-4 years. So at that time, then inflation's just wiped off your loan anyway. But yeah, this is a really good point. When we have headlines like this, um, anybody who's on the fence with this, anyone who's like, I'm going to get back in the game and I'm going to start paying my loans and I'm going to do this, they're going to hesitate, and they're going to think twice and say, like, because like, even for me, like, so I don't have student loan. I've been out of school like a long time, but it's kind of weird if there would be something coming out of saying, "Hey, like we're going to forgive everybody's student loan debt or the first, $15,000 of your student loan debt or like mortgage stuff." I'd be like, "All right, but I paid mine." Like, you know, what's the deal? I didn't have to be, working, through college. I could have been kind of doing other things, biking, hiking, things like that, versus spending my weekends in the electrical and plumbing departments at big box stores. Um, so, yeah, like this doesn't seem fair, right? So it's like if you're responsible, sometimes you get punished. Howdy to Red Crusader, by the way. David Montgomery or Donald Montgomery. God, I'm sorry. David Montgomery's on my fantasy football team. He's a running back for the Chicago Bears. It's really cost me this year. So, but I still made the playoffs. But Donald, that wouldn't be you. You'd rush 120 yards, 3 touchdowns every game. I could count on you, buddy. So thank you for the thumbs up in this show, and very much appreciate that. Yes, do Doc a solid. Thumbs up. Watch hours are important, and I'm also approaching 1,000 subscribers. Like I'm almost at 950. So this is pretty amazing, which is like double where I was at the start of November. So that was really, really cool. So, and our good friend here, Red Crusader from the state of Ohio, Red Crusader, Ohio. What's the vision? You made a deal with the student loan devil. Prepare for unforeseen consequences. No kidding. And man, I need the coffee this morning. You guys are watching this show. Like, is Dave okay? Like, he's semi-coherent. I'm like, I'm good. I'm just like, I don't know. I feel good. I'm fine. So one of my coworkers, this was about 5 years ago. We're at a meeting and he looks over, Nick, he looks over at me and he goes, "Hey, are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, dude, I'm fine." He's like, "You're sure?" He's like, you look like you're having a stroke." And I'm like, dude, no, I'm good. I'm thinking about this stuff. And he's like, "Oh, just like your facial image and stuff." And he's like, he was like really concerned. I'm like, "I'm fine, dude. Everything's good." And I'm kind of thinking, holy smokes, like what was going on there? Because I felt fine. Like I was just kind of concentrating on some stuff. Like I don't know, was it bad angle that he had, or was it lighting, or what was going on? But he was like ready to like call 911 and rush me to ER. So I don't know. I'll watch the chat here. If you're like, "Dave, you need to like slow down or get more coffee." So no, things seem to be going okay. So I think the editing stuff is messing with me a little bit because one, it's a deadline, and two, I'm navigating the system I'm not familiar with. And I read my book so many times that it's hard to, I don't know, you lose some part of objective analysis. But this, I mean, it's just going through like making sure figures are in the right places and sentence and certain breaks and stuff like that. But I don't know. But again, I'm using a system I'm not familiar with, and I think it's kind of showing in some other areas. Best answer ever. Stop watching. No eyeballs, no attention, no money. So let's go. And hey, it is Vanessa. And I'm going to get to you, Robert. Hey, Vanessa, welcome, Vanessa. Inflation causes an increase and lien as rates go up. It's not a decrease. So thanks for putting that in there, Vanessa. I appreciate it. Thanks for stopping over here. Robert Ribbit Harrison. Hello, folks. Doc, everybody else. All right. Robert Monday took possession of the new SUV, so the Zero Weight Oil. And I am loving it, although it's not really the vehicle I'll drive. It's more my wife's vehicle, but yeah, first vehicle we've had with a heads up display and all wheel drive, and then just all the electronic stuff inside, the program and stuff. And so I'm like, I just had to sit there the next morning and be like, how the hell does this actually like work? Like all of this like lane sensing stuff, radar in front, and all of that stuff. But the heads up display is awesome. Never had one in my life. And then I was like, this is cool. I'm definitely up for that. So um yeah, that's nice. It's it's a it's really cool. Um but at the time, like when we were going through and they're like dealers like showing us the stuff and kind of step through, here's a program this and here's a program this and this and this, and I'm like, we'll figure it out. I kind of got it, but I'm like, holy smokes. So the car, actually I can start it remotely from my phone. So yeah, not that I'd ever do that, but so anyway, zero weight oil all the way. Here's a solution. Don't depend on credit cards. It's from Red. Yeah, people, the credit card stuff again, and student loan stuff too. Coupling into this, Red. When people, I had a roommate who had student loans in college, and the dude, he got a bought a car, was partying all the time, like clothes, bought a leather jacket, and I'm like, um, I don't know, man. Like, so this loan, and then he dropped out like after the third year, so he didn't complete, and his, wasn't going to classes and stuff like that, and so I don't know. Also, don't spend more than you make. Right on. So as I said, like it just, got the vehicle, but the last vehicle I had was 14 years old. So, and actually, because we had kept that one in very good shape, privately sold it and did really well on that. So, um, but yeah, take care of the things that you have and don't spend more than you make. Andrew said, Aaron Clary made the great point that all these college grads begging for their loans to be canceled are admitting they are not smart. So, yeah, I guess, Andrew, because they wouldn't have got into that in the first place. Or the other part is that, I mean, there's so many parts that go into that, right? But I know with Aaron and his book, Worthless specifically, that he's right on. I mean, there are certain, um, there are, I wouldn't say degree, there are certain courses and pathways that you can take in college that do not lead you to an outcome that you couldn't have gotten to without that degree. And the other thing is, and now you have the debt and the time that you've invested. Um, if you have to seriously look, especially today, certification programs and coding, the different Google certification programs. I had on Sassed one too many 2 weeks ago on my Monday night show, and Sassed was talking about he was in a motorcycle accident. I think he was 21, and then he went to vocational rehab after that and learned computers. Actually, if you go on safetyphd.com over there in the corner, but I have a couple pictures, but I have a picture when he was working in 1984 at the computer training center that he gave me and had me put in the blog post. It was pretty interesting, but he learned on the job. There are a lot of places around here where you can learn on the job, or you can get an apprenticeship, right? And you can electrical or plumbing or HVAC or whatever. We have a place not too far away, like they will hire you and get you trained in all of the HVAC stuff. And not only that, they have an on-site cafeteria, right? Which is good. Like this is part of their marketing thing, right? So that's this. Oh, sorry. This could be one of you. And it is not one of you. what I get is sometimes people will message me during the show, but that was from my school district where my kids go to school, and it just was another close contact alert, which we get 2-3 times a day. One of the kids saying, "Hey, they've been in close contact with someone who's tested positive. So watch them if they're not feeling well, keep them home." But it's literally like 3 times a day we get that, to the point where it doesn't mean anything anymore. It's so ubiquitous. Everybody just gets saturated with these things. But um so where we're oh yeah, degree stuff. So there's this place again, real close to us, and they're like, come in here, like we'll get you certified in the HVAC stuff, 17-18-year-old graduate, or if you're 40 years old, whatever, we'll train you, and then put in so many years with us, a couple of years. But then we also have a cafeteria, like your food will be free, it's good, and all these things. So right, if you're there are so many of these degrees, anthropology or something like that. Like, okay, if you gotta really dedicate to that and hope that you're going to have some placement in some, how that's going to get funded or whatever, and you're going to have to move around or things like this, and or just these general, human studies degrees and stuff like that. So yeah, I I don't know. Um, we're not. One of the things too, the university system, not only university, the K-12 system is set up, Andrew. So I'm a former administrator. The K-12 system is set up to direct students into the university setting and not into post-secondary trades. So when you're doing transition reports for students, then schools get notified a couple of years after the students graduate. And they're like, here's how many of your students are in college, and here's how many aren't, and some other things. So they track by, I think, social security number. People don't know this, right? It's actually, there's a report that comes back, and then you, as a district, you are kind of graded on this. And the higher grade you get is for more of your students who are attending college. But what happens if you also have a student, like I said, what if the student comes out this 18-year-old, or what if they change things with over the road truck driving, and the student's like, I want to be an over the road truck driver, and picks that up, and by age 19 now has got his first job and is making $60,000 a year, and wants to get his own rig and whatever. But you're looking at that student, the way that the things are calculated and come back to the districts, that student would look almost like a dropout, almost like they wouldn't be in this calculation. So, whoa. So it's really screwed up. Red Crusader, long time, sir, from Carl. Saying hi to Carl. Robert wrote, nice guys finish last in the world, unfortunately. Yeah, it's kind of true, right, Robert? Unless you've got zero white oil, then you're probably at front. So, but yeah, there's something to this. I think you can, I think in my life, I would say I was considered a nice guy. Like, I'm a nice person. If you talk to, Doc stuff, like Doc's a nice person. But I would also say in the last 8 years, maybe, and like it's being ratcheted up every year, I've become a much more assertive person. So, if I don't have, if people aren't responding to me, I don't have the information, whatever, it's like, boom, like I'm going to be on this, and I'm going to be like following through on it or something. So yeah, I had something kind of strange with like a hospital visit, like the way it got billed out. And then I'm like, this is garbage, like, because this is billed out incorrectly. And they're like, no, whatever. And I'm like, I got a picture of like the sign in front of the billing and the time, like for urgent care and stuff like this. And I'm like, no. And where do you want me to present this? Like, where do you want me to go? And then they like changed it, but that was persistence. And there were some other things, like I was holding on with persistence. And So that's something too, is I think just becoming more, maybe it's just part of age too, but becoming more persistent. I always want to be like a kind person. That generally is important to me to do that because people have been generally kind to me. So using manners and using and just doing things right. Like if we have snow, I don't know when we will. It was 67 here 2 days ago, but we have snow. I'll take my snowblower out and clear out my neighbors' driveways. One, because I love like my snowblower; it's just a fun thing, but just because it's a neighborly thing to do. And one of my neighbors, like, his guy's like 94 years old, so I'm like, don't worry, I'll just like come down and clear your stuff out. Actually, in my neighborhood, we have a really good network of people who do this. So you'll see them just take their snowblowers and they'll kind of go up and down the road and they'll just check, hey, like this driveway hasn't been plowed out. So when a snowplow comes through, then you got like this 4 foot pile of snow at the end of your driveway. So people can't get out a lot of times, or especially elderly people, like that's hard stuff to shovel or even to snowblow. Um, so like there'll be people coming up and down, and if they see it, they'll just go in and they'll at least clear the end of your driveway out, and then sometimes with the other people. But yeah, I think there is this thing, Robert, you're right, with this nice guys finish last, and you got to be assertive for what you have because other people will just step over you or take advantage. um and so this is Mictobus, the safety doc. Donald was a phishing bot, ban those accounts. Well, gosh darn it. Wait a second here. Mictobus, um, hey, your blue wrench. Can you ban that? So let me do a little blue wrench maintenance here to get a little more blue wrench power going in the. Hang on there. My God, I had a conversation with a bot. So, Carl, you're blue wrenched. Um, Red, you are blue wrenched. People I know are blue wrench worthy here. Robert, are you have a blue wrench to you? I have. So right, I just added a couple more wrenches. So you guys know what to do with those wrenches. You see that stuff, go in there and smack smack that stuff out of here. Get rid of that. So, all right. Um, Robert is saying, don't forget to like and subscribe to Safety Doc. Yes, please do. Um, the number of subscribers will certainly crest 1,000. Now the question is, when will we get to 4,000 watch hours? Because we're at about 1750 right now for watch hours. And part of that is because the show was on hiatus when I was writing the book. So it really picked up again in October. So then the hours have been going up. But if you can watch the show as you're, doing some things, hey, you go through 162 episodes of Safety Doc plus the Face Validity shows. There's a lot of stuff out there that help the show. So Vanessa, meant loan increase on inflation. Your student loan prices at Fed level are based on those eventual prices and interest rates set by Feds. So, all right. Let me keep going through the chat, and then we'll get to our final article, which is from the Georgia New Star. Robert, awesome to hear. Stay on top of oil changes and fuel injection cleaning of every 30,000 miles, cleaning every 5,000 on full synthetic. So good. I always do Mobile One full synthetic. And so the vehicle I bought in 2008, every oil change on that was full synthetic. And really, it was running great when we got rid of it. But Wisconsin and winters and the body and just some other, it was time, and we wanted to transition into an SUV for some of the functionality. Have one sedan, one SUV. But I'm sold on that. So thanks for that. And yeah, the fuel injectors. So Robert, should that be done by a dealership, or is there a fuel injector in a can cleaner? Because I think there's something where the fuel injectors get messed up a little bit. So, and then they need cleaning, right? But yes, actually, I don't put a lot of miles on, so on either vehicle, so it usually is like 3,000 miles. I changed the oil out, which is also on my car. That's probably like every 6 months. So I don't put a lot on mine. My wife will put a little more on hers, but my car, I turned all nonsense off. I just want to drive. So yeah, um, it's wild. So wild, 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 wild stuff. Um, Robert, these new motors don't hold like the old motors hold up. A lot of new motors are direct injection. They get dirty really fast. Maintenance, 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 very important. Got it. So older cars can be best. Yep. Yeah. And we typically take care of our things, so I'm hoping, and drive it pretty light. Keep everything garage. So all pro Lemonton, you can get undergrad degrees very cheap in community colleges and computer schools. It's the room and board that can get people. So yeah, where I live, we're close to a major university, which you could drive to. There's a lot of urban traffic there, but we also have a 2-year school, which is 15 miles away, where you can pick up a lot of stuff. So in combining that with some online stuff, yeah, you're right. My first 2 years of college, I went to a community college 10 miles from my house. Just drove back and forth. And my semester tuition, I still have the semester tuition bill. My semester tuition for 18 credits was $700. That was it. $700, including student fees, for my first semester of college. So, yeah. Let's go over here to our last story. This is from the Georgia Star News. Here it is. The Georgia Star News. More than half of federal school COVID relief funds used for non-pandemic purposes. All right. So let us check this out. So we're going to do the face validity test on this one. And here we go. Okay. Look at Georgia Star. What a logo. All right. The Georgia Star News. Report more than half of federal school COVID relief funds used for non-pandemic purposes. All right. Let's read a little bit. Large share of federal COVID relief for safe school reopening diverted to non-pandemic uses. Estimated 40 to 65% of funds to protect teachers, students from virus go to new tracks, tennis courts, stadium expansion, security cameras. So what they did, this is by Mary Lou Lang. And when did this come out? December 13th. So Mary Lou who? This time of year, everybody's like, hey, you're Mary Lou who? She's like, okay, I've heard it enough. But they're like, no, you're Mary Lou who. And then she's like, no, I'm not. I'm Mictibus Lou who. And they're like, no, you're not. So the public spending watchdog group Open the Books found widespread. So I did check out Open the Books. I'm not going to click and link out of here, but for example, Creston, Iowa expanded their sports stadium and spent $231,000 to add bleachers. In Kentucky, a track was replaced using relief funds. So all of this. Okay. So here's the deal. Face validity on this report. More than half of federal school COVID relief funds used for non-pandemic purposes. From a face validity standpoint, okay, I found this to be accurate. Okay, I went in with my school administrators this fall. So I had about 20 school administrators, and we talked about how they were spending their dollars. All right. And yes, probably about 50% of the dollars went toward things you typically wouldn't consider to be COVID relief fund items. So here was the deal. Let's go back. So in 2020, there were billions of dollars that were approved for schools, K-16. But let's talk about K-12 schools and these billions of dollars. So the district where I'm in, I don't know, I think got almost $3 million. One of the districts in our conference received like $2.3 million. In our conference, they built a new football stadium with artificial turf. And this was an article in then our area newspaper. The board there approved it. They didn't hide any of this. Districts that are doing this, right? They're saying, hey, here's the deal. The bar we had to meet was we had to produce something which would contribute to the health and wellness of our students during a pandemic. And a stadium does that, right? Like people, athletics and movement and fitness increases immunity. I mean, you can make that argument in a minute. And it's so low bar to make that argument that, you know, basically anything would go for this. So that was these districts looked at this. And the other part was when they got the money, they had to spend it quickly. So you're not going to invest in like a whole bunch of new staff because you're not going to be able to keep them around once the money's gone. You weren't able to get specialized equipment necessarily, like UV, light machines, and so here was the thought when this money came out. Here's where I thought it was going to go. When I saw this approved, there was this condition. There was this whole document that went with it, and it said you can improve your HVAC system, so your heating and air conditioning filters and exchange your air faster in buildings. Like this could be one way that you're, addressing this. You could invest in more sinks, more hand sanitizing stations. You could use it to buy masks. You could use it to buy additional cleaners, these kind of microban surfaces, these laminates that can go on, high contact surface, all of this stuff you could buy. So yeah, some districts did that. Other districts did not do that. They took these funds and they doled them out as teacher bonuses. That happened. They used them to give teachers additional sick days off and then replenish the sick days through these funds. They were using them to buy these material things such as athletic fields, Hvac equipment, weight room stuff, things like that. So from a face validity, let's look at this again from face validity. Report more than half. Okay, so this is from one study, but anecdotally, per my experiences with a sample of 20 students who were school administrators this fall, this is exactly in line with what I was finding. About half of this was quasi what you would say direct for pandemic relief funds. And part of this money could have been spent again for like increasing Wi-Fi access or helping families that didn't have Wi-Fi access get it, or hotspots or things like that. So there was vague guidance that came out on this. There was no oversight on it. The districts got dumped money. They were told to spend the money quickly. And then there's no accountability or people coming in afterwards at a state level or the Fed saying, how did you spend the money? So back in 2008, I was an administrator and we received ERA dollars, the American Recovery and whatever Act, 2008. We received ERA dollars in schools. And that was back after the housing crash, right? And they're trying to stimulate the economy. And there were extreme conditions on those funds. One is you had to use American products like American steel if you're renovating or so that was a big thing. And the second thing was you had to do prevailing wage in the area. You had to have multiple bids put out on things. So like it was a task. Like yeah, the money was great, right, to have come in, and I used it to buy some. I designed some disability wheelchair vans that could have wheelchairs in them, and yeah, obviously that's why you get a wheelchair van, right? But that could have larger chairs and really, put the money in a place to get students into the community and access and things like that. So I thought I renovated some bathrooms so they were ADA accessible. Um, Spent the money in a very responsible, steward-like way. And back then, you kind of had to because the audits were really intense on this stuff too. Not the way it was with this. So, welcome to our good friend Phil Henry joining us from Germany. Welcome, Phil Henry. So, just one more time here on this article, report more than half of federal school COVID relief funds used for non pandemic purposes. From face validity, it's shocking, but it's kind of true, right? But again, if it's technically this as long as you're spending dollars to somehow contribute to student wellness, student return to academics after pandemic, student fitness, you're fine in the eyes of the Fed and the state. That's the only barrier there was. So to make the argument of saying, hey, we just put in this new stadium, and by the way, if that's your new stadium, you got to call your contractor because you got ripped off. That thing looks like it was new in about 1954. But again, and then the school in back of it's like from 1920. This probably isn't the best picture to go along. Well, they don't even have where this picture's from. Probably not the best picture to pair with this. So, because whatever, they use their money to build a retro stadium apparently here. And Vernon Jones over here, he would not put up with that. But yeah, so as long as you could make that statement of saying, by doing this, the fields can be accessible more often because if it rains, it takes time then for the fields to dry out. These fields, we can use them an hour after it rains. Everything, goes through, and whatever it is, you're good. Like there's no one challenging you then on the other side. There's no one coming in from the feds saying, give the money back, or from the state or places have said, we gave our teachers extra money, our bonus money for retention. So we had teachers then because there's a teacher shortage or whatever. No one is saying you spent the money wrong unless you would have overtly gone somehow really crazy with some spending. And I don't even know what that, it's almost like you could justify anything if you really put your head to it with this. So again, it's a low barrier. Technically, there's positionality in this article, because these districts could come back and say, yeah, but this field, this artificial turf, helps student fitness, and we can use it more often than if we had regular turf. And technically, your argument would be sound with what the federal and state requirements were on that. So from face validity, this is kind of more of a common sense thing of like, this isn't the way this money is meant to be spent, right? Like, how about, your building, your sinks, how about remote learning, beefing up your Wi-Fi, just other things going through your HVAC systems, but they don't talk about that. And so, people found a loophole and ran with it. So, right, they ran with it. So let's get over here to the questions. Oh, okay. The safety doc, absolutely. Mictobus being the wrench here, took care of that right away. StreamYard doesn't delete comments on your end. Oh, okay, I didn't see that. All right. Thank you. So, got to go to work, Andrew. Watch later. Thanks, buddy. Vanessa, we shall get your subs. Base much higher. Thank you. So yeah, I'm doing really good with subs at a really good clip here. It's the watch hours, which is the thing right now. To be monetized, to have a chance at being monetized, you need 1,000 subs. So I'm almost like at 950. So 1,000 will happen. It's the 4,000 hours in 1 year of of your shows being watched. And on this channel, I have 1,800 hours of watch time. And again, part of that is I had a big break in the show when I was writing the book. So I didn't produce much. I don't know if I produced any content from January to October. So anything that was viewed was just already on the channel. So now it's all of you, going in and watching not only now, but the Monday night shows. And then there's 162 episodes on the Safety Doc podcast. So going in and finding shows, or if you're just doing something, you want something to listen to in the background, there's so many interviews. So Larry Lawton, Nikolai Raz of IU, Morgan Rogue, the survivalist who lived in Texas. Now she moved her family up to, and her family moved up to Alaska. So just so much good stuff out there. Bacon Maldito was on the show. We were talking about pandemic lingo back when all those new terms are coming in, contact tracing, flatten the curve, and the fact that we had like 15 new terms to deal with in like 2 months. So been using full synthetic for decades. I love full synthetic. Full synthetic's great, especially for us people in the north. Yep, I know, here in Wisconsin. I remember my 1988 Chrysler LeBaron. In winter, I had to plug that thing in because if it got below 20 degrees, like it wouldn't start. I was running regular oil back then, maybe like 1030 or something like that. But now with full synthetic, it's a lot better. Agorizer, I used to wrench for a living. All right. Vanessa, trouble here in New England is rust. Yeah, same thing in Wisconsin, stuff they put down on the roads. And then when I had my other vehicle, before I had 3,000 miles on it, I had 2 chips in the windshield, and they were from like salt trucks throwing this rock salt off the back on the roads in big chunks. And then the front of the vehicle had to do a lot of touch up. Thankfully, it's white. And so white is a little easier to touch up on the front fascia. Yeah, it's just kind of a straight white. So, but yeah, I kept it bay pretty well with that. On my 2008, I had to redo the doors, which I did myself. I had to redo those twice because they were rusting out on the bottoms. And so I was pretty happy with how things turned out. I was able to get that vehicle down the road 14 years, but the last part of rust, which was starting now, there wasn't much I could have done unless I really wanted to get in and start to do some major panel work. And at that point, it just wasn't going to be worth it. Red said, you don't have to deal with changes as much. And I managed to hit a change right before winter every year. So yeah, oil change stuff. Very good. Yeah. Robert wrote, your best bet, Lucas fuel filter injector cleaner at the least, if not a full cleaning system. Cool. So Robert, is that like you'd have it done by the dealer, or if it's a full system cleaning? So I'll have to check out the Lucas stuff. Because Robert, by the way, this is his profession, so he knows what he's talking about. Hey, look at me. Carl, the money for the flu isn't being used for the flu. My heart, Wheezy, I'm coming. Okay. No, the stuff was so broad that got dished out to schools, and then with this whole combination of here's a whole bunch of money, a short time to spend it, and basically, if it does, you can spend it on anything as long as you can badge it of getting kids back to school or wellness. So, which is a wide open door. In schools then also didn't have the time to go out and get like HVAC updates, because what they would say to me, like some administrators would say, well, we don't have HVAC people are behind in trying to get this stuff. So if they're trying to order stuff for a school, like by the time it's encumbered in the budget with schools, this money already might have to be spent, or like by the time they can do this project, like the labor part. So all of this stuff was just jammed, or just like thrown out there. Nothing like 2008. Like the era dollars were a, I guess as an administrator, it was kind of a blessing. I mean, you could go in and get, like I said, wheelchair accessible vans and renovate bathrooms to ADA and just do some of those things. At least that's what I did. But it was, you had to prove all this stuff. It was like checked out by the state. And if you would have done this stuff wrong, you would have had to pay back money or something. I mean, that's not the way it went now. So where did the money go? So yeah, well, if you checked out that article there by the Star, they'll give you some examples, but it's gone. It's gone. The money is gone. I look at that, and so again, the school board close to us in our conference that voted to put in the football stadium with the artificial turf. We're talking a school, a district K-12 with less than 2,000 students in a poor area. Okay. And if, when you do that, like as a board, that this, so the thing is, you're looking at this thing, and this is our one shot to get this awesome stadium. And then, but right, you could have upgraded windows or HVAC or things in your schools, or, I mean, other things, right? You could have done that. Two-way radio systems, wheelchair accessible vans. I don't, whatever it was, but you didn't. So to me, like, that is just overtly, like, someone on the board, as that process went through, it should have been like, no, we're not being good stewards of how these dollars are coming out. But a part of it is that these schools compete against each other for free agency for students. So, if a student goes to this school and they're playing football and they're like, hey, I get to play in this new stadium with artificial turf. And I mean, who would have thought about that? God, when I was a high school kid in this state, there might have been 3-4 schools that had artificial turf. And now in our conference, I think there's 2 that don't. That's another, one other district, and that's it. So it is just so, not only that, like jumbotrons. One of the high schools down the road from us has the 3rd biggest jumbotron in our state at their new high school stadium. So, and they sell these skyboxes to parents at these stadiums. I mean, this stuff is just nuts. But so yeah, it'll technically, right, it won't meet a condition of being fraudulent spending, but it does meet a face validity condition of not being a good and responsible steward of the money, for sure. So it's frustrating for me as a former school administrator to see this, because I think it significantly erodes credibility of boards of education and school leaders, and the fact that then there are organizations at a state level. There's state organizations for school administrators, school boards, didn't step up on this stuff also and just went along with it. So you get to see pretty fast that, hey, like this wasn't right. Like, this doesn't pass, a face validity test. Oh, okay. Carl wrote to Joe, got it. When I pointed this stuff out at my kids' school 10 years ago, they almost threw me out. I'm a bit big, so it'd be difficult. So, whoa, Carl, don't let them throw you out. Where's the money? Where's the money? Worked at a company, this is Carl, which rhymes with Blamazon, who removed handicapped bathrooms for pollution centers. Huh. All right, Vanessa, this year is the last year for teachers to obtain a master's degree in their teaching subject in New England. Maintaining licensure requires it. We had 5 years to do so. Wow. Okay. And what is that going to mean for teacher shortages and licensing? So Vanessa, in Wisconsin, some of the districts are requiring all staff to have their teaching license. Let's say you're teaching English, you have to have that, or chemistry, or special, whatever it is. and an ESL license or certification. And that's like requisite. So either if you're not hired with it, you have 2 years. And most of the districts are putting that on people to pick that up on their own. So yeah, more of this progressive kind of licensure stuff. But wow. Phil Henry, awareness training and consultants. Yeah. And a lot of money didn't go, I think, toward consultants on this. I thought the school safety, well, I thought when this money came out that the districts were going to be inundated with these HVAC pros who would come in and say, here, we're going to sell you this filter system. And I think the fact was they couldn't get that together fast enough on their side. There wasn't enough parts and they already had demand from like hospitals and things. So like schools didn't get inundated like they do with school safety. Or people like special hand sanitizers, UV wands, or misting backpacks of whatever. Those types of things did happen, but nowhere to level I thought they were going to happen. Or even like consultants coming in on. I think if someone would have had that together and say, I'm a consultant on psychology of how to, get people to socially distance or kids or something like that, or consultant on wellness or something like, and you're marketing yourself to schools, you probably had a window there where you could have been booked out like every day and you could have been charging $2,000-$3,000. I think this stuff happened so fast and nobody could get their stuff together fast enough for it. And I think there's also this customer perceived value. Once one school district saw another district, oh, you spent your money on a football field? Like, okay, that means, and no one said anything. All right, now we're going to go and spend our money on XYZ. Because if you've done this and no one's saying anything, we know we can probably push this. Customers perceive value. Either we're going to do the same thing or whatever. And Carl wrote to Phil, you got it. In 5 years, the education system will collapse. One teacher will be able to teach 500 kids. And there'll be any subcontracted tutors. I think what's interesting, Carl, I think what's happening is there are these micro schools which are starting. I don't really see it in Wisconsin much, but I think in Florida, I have a friend there who said, and I have a friend out in Pennsylvania who does this, who's a teacher, who said, I subcontract either with homeschool parents, or some of these states now are giving the money is following the student. So there might be one teacher and they'll have like 7 kids that they'll work with. And they're not necessarily working at a school. It might be a library. It might be other places where they're contracting for space, some of it online, some of it in vivo. Like if they're doing chemistry, they might be out at locations doing some of the stuff for biosciences. But this whole thing of kind of like the micro school stuff is catching on a little bit. Gun websites. Hey, buddy. 20th thumb. Good morning. Thanks for the 20th thumbs up. I appreciate it. And I was over to one of your shows the other night, buddy. Thank you. Carl H. How did you get the wrench? Did I give you, Carl? I have to go over, and there are 3 dots next to your name, and then it says no. Then I can give you the moderator. Yes, there's 3 dots, but only I can do that. So, all right. And Vanessa, the salt line is really tough. Got it. Great show. Going to watch the rest later. All right. See ya, Phil. Phil is in Germany, by the way. So we have a time zone difference, but Phil Henry, our friend in security and instruction and entrepreneurial activities in Germany. One Fast Stack A from Alberta, Canada. Hey, buddy. Hey, good to see you. Same here. And I wonder how the weather is up by you. We had 67 degrees 2 days ago and humid. So it had this sense like it literally could have been shorts and a t-shirt, especially because we were like in the 30s for a month. And then when you get that sudden increase in temp, but now we're back down to about 30. So, but hope all is well with you up there in Alberta. And thanks for stopping over here. Carl wrote, for 40 years, we didn't update the HVAC process For the common cold, why now? Garbage. And the whole thing too of so this big guidance came out. There was this document I shared in my superintendent course about how to consider upgrading your HVAC. And it was, you could just see like it was way over the top. Again, these districts were getting this rapid funding. There was no way you could scale this stuff across these districts, get all these parts, get HVAC people to do this. Right. And suddenly some of these buildings that are older, like how are you going to control for what is HVAC really going to, what difference? And it's not as simple, right? We get into this from a face validity. If it was really simple, all of us would have seen at stores, that sell furnace filters. All of us would have seen an end display. Hey, this is an antiviral furnace filter, right? It's been treated with something, or like it has a higher MERV rating, which is the air passing through. So residential is about 8. I think if you get into hospitals, like some ORs or something is like 16 or, things like that. But if you go with a high MERV rating filter, which might filter out more like virus stuff, it takes more to suck the air through. So a traditional furnace would burn out. It wouldn't. So, people that manufacture these things, they can't give them to these stores because immediately someone takes it home and it burns out their furnace. Like there'd be a consequence for that. It'd be coming back to the store, they'd be all angry and they quickly have to pull these things off. So that was another thing. I'm hearing all this HVAC stuff and I'm like, out of the stores where I buy like my air filters and stuff, like there's not one thing that's changed. You would have thought like someone would have come up with that idea, right? Here's some antivirus treated filter. So I think that was another face validity point of saying the people in the industry realize this is more complicated. It's going to mess with the systems. They don't want to deal with that. Being sued of, hey, like we just bought your filter and now everything died. So this is at Atham. Atham wrote, I worked 90 hours a week throughout fall semester and still managed to get a 3.6 GPA. Not bad. Atham, you're a hard worker. You're a smart guy. So I appreciate it. I always appreciate everything that you post. And Atham is just a hard worker. So, and he likes to drive big vehicles. I'm sorry about the Ford Expedition because it got totaled out for Atham. It wasn't his fault though. But and he likes caving. But yeah, I mean it's putting in it's the same thing, not the same thing, but I didn't work 90 hours in college, but I worked probably 30 hours a week and maintain a high GPA. But it's almost like now there's a sense of, if you go in college, you're not working at the same time. I'm like, when did that happen? And when I wrote School of Airs, for example, I was working full time plus teaching some university classes on the side, which I've always done, and then like sitting down and writing a book and stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting thing because I hear college being talked about more as like, it's just college. Like if you're college, you really shouldn't be working during college. I'm like, no. That's, come on. Hey, our good friend Walter P 380. Hey, Walter. Good morning. I got a fever and the only cure is a dose of the cowbell. Yeah, I could use more cowbell. And then, so I love it. That was a great sketch. Yeah, that was really cool. Red Crusader. Now the community has no clue what it needs. I work in a vice industry. Our sales skyrocket every time a stimulus check arrived. Yep. So if you give people money, what's it being spent on? It was that. And then in Mictibus, one thing, like we updated all of our phones, I think in November. So like mine, my oldest daughter, and my wife. So her phone used to be my phone. So I was like 6 years old. And then my phone was like 4 years old. And my daughter's phone was 3 years old. So like we had kept our phones and then, decided to do the upgrade on the phones. But one of the things was the guy, as we're getting the upgrade stuff, he's like, Yeah, some of these phones are just coming back in stock because when the stimulus checks came out, we got wiped out of our phones. And so these people come in and, they're like, hey, like I would need the new iPhone 13 Pro or whatever for over $1,000. And I mean, just sitting there and the time it took them to do the transfer on the phones and set it all up, like the kiosk around us, you can overhear the conversations and people would be, or like the sales rep would be like, okay, like, sir, you have $600 left on your phone and 700 left on your wife's phone. So would you like to pay those off, or we can amortize those over 30 months? Or I'd be like, holy smokes. Like, I've never had a situation where I've had to come in and pay off a phone to get a phone. Like, my phones usually go a number of years. And then part of the reason at that time, like this phone, I upgraded because it's also our camera. So, but yeah, that it's just crazy, right? These people who are coming in and that's one thing, like the person helping us, like kind of, I just says, did you observe that? Or people coming, he's like, yep, it was pretty much clockwork. Stimulus checks be deposited and people would come in and get the best phones that we had. I'm like, oh, okay. Atham is a good semester. So cool. I found when I wrote School of Errors, because I had, I was working full time and I was doing the university stuff part time. Because I was so busy, I actually kind of felt like it was easier to write the book. Like my mind was just kind of already set at this higher level. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess I kind of just calibrate it to that. It seems like counterintuitive. Like the busier you'd be, the less productive you'd be, but that really wasn't the case. Mictobus to Red. This is above and beyond the monthly spikes when people get their government paychecks. So Mictobus wrote, my phone is 8 years old. No plans on upgrading as long as it still works. The batteries are the only thing that need to be replaced over time. Yeah. My you're right. And one of my, so our oldest phone had some damage to it too. And my daughter's phone was repurposed, and my phone was repurposed into a semi webcam type thing. So my older Samsung. So yeah, but I'm not one when the new phone comes out or whatever. I do like the camera though, and the fact I don't have a point and shoot camera or 35 millimeter. That when we go on vacation, especially now with the kids, I'm using that. But yeah, that is crazy. Atham, hey, your ex bought your phone for you. All right. So Carl H. Mictobus, I only replaced my phone after 4 years. I couldn't hear anyone unless headset on in car. Good phone, by the way. So yeah. Gun websites. On the subject of phones, they are no longer tools. They are spies, prison guards, distractions, propaganda channels. Hardly worth spending money more than the absolute equipment. Right. So I wrote about that in my new book, The Velocity of Information, how your phones are pinging out all the time, your location and things like that. And when back in October, there was an upgrade, software update or something. I think it was October of 2020 for iPhones and for Androids. And then you got a tracing app, which was downloaded. And then you had to activate it to make it, or download a companion app to make it activate it. And basically it would notify you if you had been in proximity with someone. So 15 minutes within 15 feet of somebody who had tested positive. So like the whole logistics of this was kind of crazy. I think in Colorado, like half the people in the state downloaded the app and used it. And I was just looking at it from a logistics standpoint of like, well, what are they going to do? Like you're going to get notified or someone's going to call you, or like, the whole thing was just kind of weird. But anyway, when we set up the new phones, that immediately came up on every phone. Do you want to activate this app? And I'm like, no. Um, so yeah, and not in gun websites talking about that. And additionally, like vehicles, like the vehicle we have that we picked up this week, um, is I can go on my phone right now and identify where the vehicle's at, right? Like physically, I can bring it up on a map. Every trip that the vehicle takes, because it has a permanent navigation system as part of the package. Um, you can download every trip that the vehicle has ever made. You can pull up the date, and it will show the vehicle did this trip on this date. It made all of these. I mean, so of course, all of that information is being aggregated into what sales, insurance, investigations. I mean, all of this stuff is out there, and it's crazy. What did I see? Like Toyota is proposing now to charge to that your fob to start your car. If you want remote, you'd have to subscribe, so that feature works. And then like other features in cars are looking to be like subscription based. So oh, you want your seats to adjust? That's $1.99 a month or something. I mean, so this whole subscription based thing seems to be rolling. We don't have that outside of the in case there's an accident, you have to pay that monthly fee or something, which I'm not paying that, but that notifies and stuff like that. But it's not far off, right? Where and some people will want that. Some people will want these features, right? But they are just what we would say things you thought you had when you owned the vehicle, like that you had a remote start, but no, now it's only activated. So it goes. I remember this Seinfeld episode. Was it David Putty when he was selling cars? And then like Jerry goes in to buy a car, and then there was a fee for keys, and he's like, keys, and Putty goes like, yeah, how are you going to start it otherwise? So Jerry's like, okay. And that's what, 20 years ago, big spoof. And now it's like, no, like there are going to be these additional fees. So and this whole thing of yeah, the tracking and spies and all of that type of stuff. It's ubiquitous, right? I remember when I got my first gun websites. I remember when I bought my first or I got my first Gmail account, right? And I was like, whoa, because I had been paying for an email account with a private provider back in the early 90s when email kind of started. So it was our local thing, and I had my email address. And by the way, like when one of the workers left, they like sabotaged the whole system. It was really bad. But so I had to pay so much a month to have an email address through this local provider. And at that time, there was no Gmail. And suddenly when Gmail comes out with this concept of saying, hey, you'll have one email address, you pick it, it will be lifetime and you'll never have to pay for it. You can access it from anywhere. I mean, this was great. And then you start wondering, well, I don't have to pay for it. So, but that's not free, right? This is a big, expensive network. And if they're maintaining this and all of my stuff and it's free, it's not really free. Like what are they getting out of this? And I mean, and just think today, what people would go bananas if like Google said, hey, like from now on, if you want to keep your Gmail, you've got to pay $1 a month. People would, and they would do it. Most people would do it because they wouldn't want to give up their mail and say, all access to every mail that you ever sent, or otherwise it's going to be gone. But oh my God. Carl, didn't we talk about this in your podcast? Told you. Yep, you did, Carl. Mictibus, you will own nothing and be happy. I wrote about this in the Velocity of Information, Mictibus. We are becoming a subscription society for everything. And 3D printing, so I don't 3D print. I'm a big fan of 3D printing. And I wrote in the book how I think we're moving from just-in-time manufacturing to 3D printing, which will either happen in your home or very localized for a lot of things. So you're not going to have a lot of shipping of finished products. They print it. Not going to be long. And 3D printing is going to get hit with this of saying, you're going to be a part of a subscription network. Or let's say you have a 3D printer in your house and it's like, okay, I'm out of whatever. And here's my list. I'm on Amazon or some new site, which has the things I put in my order. and boom, it 3D prints it. So I've just, in my subscription, I'm paying $19.99 a month to have my subscription, and then I can go in, plus then I have to pay for the cost of ordering these things. And but yeah, it is. I think we're very close with vehicles. I think we are within 10 years of seeing more leased vehicles than purchased vehicles. And especially once we get to the electric, I think that model's going to happen where you're going to, and and here's how it'll be sold too. It'll be, well, that way we can always keep more current vehicles, which will be safer on the road. We can have more standardization across vehicles if they're all kind of using similar platforms and more interchangeable. So yeah, basically you're going to be going to your dealer and paying a subscription, and maybe after like 36 months, you have to turn the vehicle in and it gets recycled or something like that to make sure there aren't these older vehicles. So remember that old cars for cash for clunkers thing? Probably something similar, where they're just going to force you out of your internal combustion engine vehicles or your kind of hybrids or first generation electric. I think it's going to happen. Bill Gates will own everything, be very sad. He owns a lot of farmland now, doesn't he? Gun websites, Juno to Gmail, paid, email to free, but there are ads in our email. Yeah. And one thing, gun websites, I really trimmed what I had in my Google Drive. When Google Drive did an update this fall, and I started to my stuff wasn't syncing between my computer and my drive. So I'd go on the website, do drive, and be like, well, this hasn't synced. So I talked to one of my tech friends. He's like, yeah, that's happening to a lot of people. And then I was like, well, like the stuff that I primarily use my Google Drive for, my university stuff, which is, files and things that I share during classes. I don't put it on the university's drive because I'm like, I don't know how long I'll be with the university. And like probably, not forever. So I want to be able to access these things. And so I'll put them on Google Drive, which I can access when I'm at the university. But so that stuff, some of the podcast stuff, like every podcast graphic, stuff like that. But I'm like, I don't know. Like I've been backing stuff off of that and putting it more onto just my external hard drives and really thinning out what is on drive. One, because access, and two is just security. I don't have less trust in it than I did. I don't have a lot out there right now. It's more, like I said, it's convenient stuff with the university stuff. Or if I would keynote and present, I can pull up my presentations from wherever I'm at. I always bring everything like on a thumb drive too, but the ads went away when everyone agreed to let them monitor emails anonymously. Whoa. I don't know if you guys remember the days of net zero, but when I was attending UW Superior for my master's in educational administration back in the year 2000, I think, I had net zero because university didn't have the dorms wired up for internet. They were doing it that year. So I was able to use my phone in my dorm to dial over to Duluth to their net zero for free. But then you had a box all around the outside with ads. It was kind of like that whammy thing, like no whammies. They just had these boxes of ads. And every like 12 minutes, you had to click a box of ads or it would shut your internet off. But then it was free at least. So it was crazy. Gun websites. As soon as the vehicle is a common perk of the job, no one will want one. Hey, who could be, man? Companies will lease them, of course. They could just give a tax incentive to companies to lease an electric car to their employees. Yeah, they could, right? Yeah. Like right now, I really feel, the vehicle we purchased, I think is kind of in that last of this whole internal combustion engine, like newer design type vehicles. There's just so much push, it seems, to get away from that. So Mictibus wrote, the cloud is just a fancy way of saying someone else's computer. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, the press my luck or press your luck game. Yep. It was just like that. Having net zero in the year 2000 was the no whammy game. So let's do quick shout out here to this book. So School of Errors, Rethinking School Safety in America, the most honest book about the $3 billion school safety industry. You can buy this right now off of Amazon, places that sell books. This is really well made. It is a sewn binding because this is library grade. So from the publisher, this is a book. This specific book is the first one I received back in August of 2019 when this came out. It still is in great shape. The corners aren't bent, pages aren't falling off. It's not all scuffed up. This has gone everywhere with me. So if you do get the book, it's going to be something that it's going to be, again, well made, something you can share with people, especially people, friends who have kids in school. I had a friend who shared this with a sibling who was a teacher who said, oh, and the sibling was like, I never knew like a lot of the stuff was happening in school safety or why it happened. So, and as we have all of this stuff happening with school safety threats, good insight into how schools kind of investigate things like that, how they respond to things like that. And so, Gunsight, is there an audio version of the book? Unfortunately, no. There's no audio version of School of Errors. There is an ebook version. I wrote the book under publishing contract, no audio version. I know. I feel your sadness with that too, because that was my first book deal, and I didn't ask for audio. And at that time, the publisher didn't have audio. And I actually went back and said, could we go and re-release it in audio? And they said, no, it wasn't part of the original contract. However, the new book, The Velocity of Information, which comes out April 11th, my new book, that one, and I don't know if I have I guess I don't have the logo up for that book, which I should, right? I should have that. But The Velocity of Information does release we'll have audio, but it's staggered. It comes out after it first comes out in hardback, paperback, ebook, and then about 8 months later, it will be out in audio. So that will be out in all the formats. Gunsight, am I able to authorize one? I can't because, again, I wrote it under a publishing contract. The publisher owns the rights. I don't have derivative rights for audio for that book. I only have them for my other book, my new book coming out. So good news is Velocity of Information will have audio. Now, the School of Errors is 204 pages. So a couple nights and you can, get it read. But yeah, no, I'm with you, buddy. I wish I had, I wish I had the audio rights and could go back in and get that one released in audio. So just isn't in the works. And especially now that it's been out a couple of years, still extremely relevant. It's a great book. But it's really lost it. So yeah. Carl's saying have Jack narrate it. Yeah, Jack Napier. So so I do have the narrator for The Velocity of Information he's already lined up and so with that process I had people auditioned for the narrator role, which was really cool. I never experienced that before. So when you have somebody read your work, like for 10 minutes, it was awesome. Like that, to have all these people like put their own inflection, their own energy into it. So the person, and I can't identify who is reading it yet, but this person is an actor. And so this is a pretty big thing for me. This person is probably on TV shows that you've seen. No, it's not Danny Woodburn, who wrote the forward for School of Errors. Seinfeld's Danny Woodburn, but it's not Danny. But yeah, so like I'm super excited to have this book narrated, and it's a perfect match. So Gunsight's right. I'd be interested in hearing more about publishing. I have quite a few projects I'm printing here on my own printers and I have much to learn. So yeah, so Gunsights, I've never self-published. I've published 2 books through a traditional publisher, and the first being School of Errors, the second being The Velocity of Information, which releases April 22nd. For those, I was offered contracts and, had proposals, and, you go through proofs and all of this. And so those get into libraries. It's a scholarly publisher, Roman and Littlefield. Um, so a lot of stuff gets turned down, right? So I felt very fortunate that my work met the threshold to get in. Like, I have 471 endnotes in The Velocity of Information, as professional graphics done by professionals, right? Um, so in that, I mean, it's just a different process than self-publishing. So I am going to go through. I'm going to talk about that in the Safety Doc podcast once the book gets closer. Of like, here's how I put it together. Here's some of the strategies that I use, because I learned things. Like, I built folders for every chapter, and I outlined every chapter. And then I did like a 1-page thing of like, here's the goal of this chapter. Here's what I'm trying to communicate. And then I do like, here's my 3 sub points, and then here's the resources I'm going to put in this chapter. So like, it was very clear, and like how it would link to the other chapters. And I interviewed a lot of people. I think I did 11 or 12 interviews. So then I audio record it and I transcribed some of them. Others I sent out to have transcribed. So going through that whole process of then, working to put a book together, and with a traditional publisher, just your odds of getting published in this stuff it's a challenge, right? To get published. Now, one of the things is, when you're through the route that I've gone with traditional, you don't have the volume that you have when you're necessarily, if you're well known and you can self-publish, you're probably going to do much better, like in sales and saturation, than I would. But when like School of Errors is in hundreds of libraries across the world, and every day it gets added to more libraries. And the same thing will be with Velocity of Information. And then the same with Velocity of Information, that helps my university rank. So as a PhD professor, by showing your scholarly contributions, my publisher is a scholarly publisher. So they actually go through and rank publishing houses, and they'll be like, this is a scholarly, and so it helps me, it helps the university. So it's a good reciprocal relationship. It helps me for keynoting presentations. One of the things when I keynote presentations, I get approached for that. They're like, have you published books? Well, by this time they know, like, they've been on my website and stuff, but that's a big thing. That opens a door up for keynoting and stuff like that. And at the university, I'm actually trying to build out a required class on the Velocity of Information that would go into like a replace a public relations course. I'm not so sure that's going to happen, but we're kind of working through that. So, so Mictobus, Sylvester Stallone, holy smokes. So not Sly Stallone, but so yeah, it's exciting, because when I can say who it is, it's really cool. It's just to have the book in audio. It's exciting. I love audiobooks. So again, when I went with Velocity or School of Errors, just maybe an oversight on my part with the first contract, that I didn't have the derivative rights for audio, and we never talked about it, right? I mean, the first book, it's kind of like, holy smokes. But now, like, coming in the second one, that was negotiated a different way. And so anyway, it's kind of cool stuff. So yeah, helping out the channel, posting in the comments down below. I do respond to your post. I appreciate that. If you post something down there and say, hey, here's something you could consider, Dave, for Face Validity Friday, that'd be great. Or even like, here's something for a show, or a guest for a show, or something like that. But specifically, like that for this, here's like an article, check it out. Or here's, because what you're doing, all of you, And I love the chat. Thank you so much. When when we're talking about this, all of us, we just get more familiar with it. We, um, we see the face validity in every headline in what people are saying, and just kind of, you think about it, it just hits you more. It's like, does this make sense? Like, is it, what else do I need to know here? So go on websites this thing, hang out with folks who have eye issues, others try to check audio. I agree. And I worked in my show on Monday night, I worked at the School for the Blind for 4 years. And um, when I would talk to two of my friends down there, one is blind. And he immediately said, is the book coming out in audio, like the new book? I said, yes, it will be out in audio. So the ebook, they have text reader and stuff like that. So like, it's okay. But of course, audio is much more fluid and just, the whole energy of the narrator. So I'm with you, man. I'm still not convinced that I won't be able to have that discussion with my publisher to grant the derivative rights for School of Airs, to also get that one out in audio. So I went there this fall and that was a no-go, but I'm going to be persistent with that. Kind of remember the nice guys finish lasting. I think I got to be a little more persistent on that. And like I said, at this point with School of Airs, I said, I just want it out there for accessibility. I don't need that to make royalties and money for me. I want it out there for accessibility. And the book has already again been out there. So is there a middle ground here where we can meet and start having a discussion? So, and maybe there will be. I'll keep going back to it. So Sly can read the Joe Dolio quotes. Yeah, I could see, or Joe Dolio, Sylvester Stallone, or what is it like? Johnny Chestnuts or something like that. From I don't know. Yeah, boy, oh boy, I never thought about assigning if the different people in the book who I would assign a voice to them to narrate them. That's kind of funny. I like that. Have you read Dr. Go? Doctors of Responsible Gun Ownership? If so, thoughts about it? I have not. So somebody emailed me yesterday, somebody who's read the School of Airs, and they said, what other books do you recommend, but not necessarily like school safety books, but kind of like this? Because School of Airs I very much talk to the reader. It's punchy. There's a lot of interviews in there, a lot of anecdotal stuff. So, I mean, as the 45 reviews are all 5 stars on Amazon. It's a great book. So I said, yeah, there are some books, like Malcolm Gladwell has a new one coming out, something Mafia. I don't know what it is, but you'd find it. But it's kind of researching some things very deeply, like how some things got done. John Ronson's The Men Who Stare at Goats, I think, is an awesome book. That one's been out for a while, but talking about like modern psychiatry, how that system all kind of like ballooned up, and how the DSM, the how you get diagnosed with a mental illness. It's like a 900-page guide now, and he was talking, you can almost pathologize anybody by just kind of watching somebody for 20 minutes. Oh, like they're looking away, or they cross their legs, or they've done this, or like, so then there's a certain diagnosis you can give them. So I think Ronson stuff is pretty cool, and his is out in audiobook. Ronson narrates his own stuff. So I recorded fan reading is not out of the question. So one of the things, Mixbus, you're right. One of the things I'm going to do with the new book, The Velocity of Information, although that will eventually be out in audio, is I'm going to go and do a series where I go through the book part by part. And I'm going to talk about, here's why I came up with this. Here's some of the themes, some of the characters, I'm trying to get out of this here with finite voltage. And then I'll do some readings. So my publishing house is okay with that. If I promote my stuff, right, author events, I can read a couple pages out of a chapter. They're fine with that. So I would definitely do that. School of Airs, like, I don't know if I would do that. I have to think about it, because again, that book has been out there a while. I don't know if I would go back and concurrently do that. When I do author events, though, I do read. I have highlighted sections I go back and read out of School of Bears. So, but no, Mikvas, you're right. I do have, once the book releases Monday, April 11th, there'll be like an AP press release for that too coming out. But once the book releases, then I intend to do a multi-week just focus on the book, where book readings, and it'll be cool. Like, it's going to be a good time. So, all right. So, subscribe, hit that thumbs up here. I appreciate that very much. And the like, and let's check down here. The doctor, this is from gun websites. The doctors who stopped the CDC from funding anti-gun propaganda in 1994 formed the Dr. Go organization, an affiliation of doctors who support 2A and assist gun owners in seeking medical help. Okay, I didn't know that. So that's good to know, especially for the work that I do in school safety. I work for mental health awareness. Good. Well, thanks for letting me know about that. I wrote in, we talk about mental health awareness. This is, I'm going to put it in here. I'm typing with the, here we go. Well, I just put the date twice. Okay. 1983, PBS did a documentary called Children of Darkness. You can find it on YouTube and watch the video. It's free. It's like an hour long, but really good, of how children, youth with mental illness, what residential care kind of look like for some of these kids. And one kid, they was running away from the residential facility, so the treating psychiatrist said, put him in a pink bunny suit, kind of like that Ralphie on Christmas Story there. So there's video, so it's in there. They put the kid in a pink bunny suit and they put him in a dumpster outside of the building, and then they told 5 other kids, you have to guard the dumpster, and if he gets out, you're all in trouble. So, but yeah, we think about this stuff like 1983, that wasn't long ago. And the kids in that documentary, like, I was their age at that time. So, we don't, like, there's a lot that needs to be still invested in mental health. What the funding, the programs, the trainings, the trials, all of that. And I talked about it on my 2019 PBS TV presentation. So yeah, in 2019, I was on PBS, and it was, here we go. It was, you can just find it if you Google me plus PBS. So the show was, and one time I want to do a show on the safety doc of just what it's like to present on live PBS TV to a nationwide audience, because I did that twice on 2 specials. And believe it or not, I'm not a nervous person when I present, not at all. But I do need like an assurance, like the technology is going to work and all of that stuff. But like being in front of an audience and being like on live national television, I actually like that. Like, that was good. But like how that process happens and how you have to prepare months in advance, and the pre-approvals, and you get in and you rehearse before the audience is there, and everything gets timed, and then there's observers of your presentation, like from PBS and stuff, and then they have to make sure it's all okay, and then they lock your presentation so you can't change it. Like, nothing, can't take out a word, can't make a font different, because obviously if you're filming, something's going live, someone goes rogue and puts in a slide that wasn't in their initial presentation, that could be a big issue. But and then like how you have to stand, things that you're told to not do, things you are told to do, all the feedback you're getting from monitors in front of you, how the timing works, like, because it has to end at a certain time. And then also when the show ends, you're not done. Like, you stay there, and the audience usually stays there and asks questions. And in 2019, that went on for like 2-3 hours. And when you're answering questions from the audience, and then kind of how that process goes, and then like what happened after that. And so it's just such a unique experience because I don't know anybody who's presented on live TV. And because I've done it twice, I can kind of compare. And they were similar, right? But I want to go through that. And also some photos that I took, and I can kind of show you, like, from my perspective, what was going on. And yeah, and then the funny things that happen after, like, PBS then will pull the presentation, and then it was about 4 or 5 months they have to go through, and then they have it go through a rating committee, and it got rated G. But after it got rated, then they could re-release it to all of their affiliates. So it shows up at different times in different places. Like, it might show in Houston tonight, or if there's a school shooting, it shows in a lot of places, like, very soon, like they'll put it in programming. But like Montana or New Hampshire, and I'll just like find out because people will email me. Like, I'll, get an email and say, hey, like, because my email address is on the first slide. So it's funny because, yeah, I can get up in the morning and there'll be like 4 emails, and they'll be like, hey, like, from wherever, Houston or Palm Beach or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, like, your stuff was on PBS last night, and thanks, and or questions or stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. Hey, the bit. Look at it, is the bit. Always the bit. They keep it on tap and use it more than once at any time. So they do. So what happens with that is they initially, it was live, and then they re-release it nationally like 6 months or 4, 5, 6 months later, whatever it was, after it's closed captioned, and then that has to be approved, and then the ratings is approved. And then once they're done with that, they run it a couple times, like 4 a.m. or 6 p.m, or it's all different times. But then their affiliates have access to it, and they can put it into programming at any PBS whenever they want, kind of perpetually. So that's why when there's a school shooting, often they'll look and say, what's out there that we can access, right? That's free, that's part of our network, and contemporary, that's, not that old. And then they'll say, okay, we're going to put this into a programming slot, in the next whatever. And then they move it into programming. So, and so like, it's the second one is like exactly 1 hour. The first one is a little bit longer, so they have to mess with a couple things in order to get it into programming. But yeah, it is. So that's how it works. And usually start a school year, it becomes standard programming in some places like Reno. I don't know. I mean, there's just so many PBS places. I don't have a way to track it on my side because I don't have any access to like the PBS network, but I can see it. People usually email me and they'll just say like it came on. It's funny too, because people in the town where I live here, it shows in my state, now and then, and people will be like, I know you, or, like, you're the guy who's also been on PBS, like, in the mornings. But like, yeah, that's me. So that minor celebrity status. It's funny too, because my parents receive phone calls from their friends if I'm on TV. They'll be like, hey, like, it's been I record back in 2019, but shows now. They'll get calls. Hey, your son's on TV. PBS, though, never is the same across the state. So like, PBS channel here isn't the same as up north or on the outside. It's just kind of funny. But I'll go through like how that happened, how you get approved to present on PBS, the legwork that goes into that, the actual presentation, what happens afterwards. One of the best things I ever did professionally in my life was to present twice on PBS, plus the book. But again, like, it's so cool because like, I don't know anybody who's ever done that. And so it's cool to talk about a process, right? Where you're like, well, how does it actually work? Like, what does it look like? And how do you get on there? And so it was interesting too, because the second time I presented, it was the first time I presented, some of the people I worked with, I think, were jealous of that I was on there. And they just, that was just a weird thing. I mean, you don't get paid, you don't get compensated for being on PBS, but there was this weird vibe from some of my colleagues on that. And I'm like, well, I'm doing this on my own time. Like I've been studying, putting all of this together and scholarly contribution here. Like you could do this or you could do other things. But some people just are that way, right? The older you get, you can see that in people. It's like people who get petty and are kind of like whatever. And I think people who try to hold other people back, because if they see people moving forward and they're not choosing things to professionally or personally move them forward, they'd rather try to drag you back. So yeah, so just forget those people. Let them wallow in their own misery of stuff. And I mean, why can't you be happy, right? For someone who's done that, a colleague. Like if one of my colleagues did that, I'd be happy. Like my friend Aaron Clary, who you guys know Aaron, right? So Aaron gets a hold of me a couple of years ago. He's like, hey, I bought some land in South Dakota and I'm going to build a house. And my response wasn't, oh, Aaron's building a house in South Dakota and new house and stuff like that. I was like, well, that's great. I know you work hard. You wanted to do that for a while. You spend a lot of time in South Dakota hiking stuff. It's good for you. And then, yeah, so once he got his house, done, he's kind of like doing some of the finishing touches, and I was able to see, his place and stuff like that. I'm like, this is amazing. Like, and just the way he thought it out and the way his decor in it and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm happy for you. I'm like, good for you, buddy. I mean, you've worked hard. You've earned this. It's making you happy. You're obviously thrilled with this. So I'm really happy for you. And, but not everybody is that way. I know people just get, and it's like, no, I'm happy for people like that. And just, my friends, and when they work hard and good things, happen, because of that, I guess. But yeah, it is so weird to deal with that pettiness. It really stands out in some people. And yeah, I don't know. And maybe that's one of the reasons why, like, the people like, that I hang out with and stuff, I think they appreciate that, because I just don't think society is as complimentary or appreciative, like genuinely. Like, yeah, like again with Aaron, I said, I am genuinely happy. You got to build a house that you had wanted to build for the last, 25 years. You had this vision in your mind and were able to, get the blueprints together and the piece of land that you wanted and, the stuff. I said, I'm happy for you. Of course. But gun websites wrote, they don't know the process or even pursue the path. The result of effort appears to be luck or chance. Man, you're right on. Yeah, I think people, I don't know. It was weird on the first PBS thing. I mean, the second PBS thing, I have to say, like, I worked at a different place at the second one, and the people I worked with were like all for me. Like a lot of them even drove up and were in the audience, which was a hike. And I did not ask them to do that. And not only were they in the audience, like they kind of dressed like formal and stuff. I mean, like they were there on their own will to support me, and they were, I mean, it was really cool. But yeah, I think the first one was just this. I actually I wrote a lot of journal articles. I haven't written journal articles for a few years now, but professional journal articles, Kaplan Journal and stuff like this. And one of my bosses called me in and had read an article and said, if you have time to write articles, you've got time to be doing other things at work. You should be writing these articles. And I'm like, well, I write these on my own time. They're like a page. And they're scholarly, right? All these things about type 1 diabetes and how schools have to consider lunches and stuff like that. I mean, and nothing is talking about this place I worked or anything. These are general things that I've learned and how to, and all scholarly, like great stuff. I mean, they're all out there. And was just this thing of no. And then one of my other coworkers said, well, you know why that is, right? And I was kind of young, naive at the time, I guess. They're like, because that person feels jealous. And because you're getting some spotlight here, right? Like, because I would put it and the school board would know about it. I put it in a board monitoring report because I thought it reflected good on the district and myself. And I'm like, yeah, that person is jealous. I mean, instead of saying, hey, like, great job with this. On that Monday night show I did, the very intro to that show, the first 30 seconds, that's a voicemail from the best boss I ever had. I had two great bosses. Really, they're both on the same level, but 30-second voicemail. I had done something at a meeting or whatever, and there was a voicemail next day, and my boss, like 30 seconds, just saying, great job with this. We're going to use this like as a template. Just love working with you. You're a great professional. I'm like, wow, man, that was just cool. But yeah, again, any of you're listening to this, like you're out there, you're working, you got bosses and stuff that don't appreciate you or other people, just like tune them out. Just be like, that's a reflection of them. That's a mirror. They're insecure. They're not valuing what you're adding overall to the organization, right? Like, there's no big advantage coming from me from getting a journal article published, right? There's no paycheck with that. There's no limelight. I mean, it is kind of cool to see, like, in a professional journal, like an article you've published, but outside of that, like, I'm there to share knowledge. I mean, it's kind of this quest to do that. But yeah, this real pettiness. So looking back, now I can see it. At the time, though, it was like real. I wasn't used to that, of someone just kind of like being, no, if you have time to do this, like, you're not going to be writing these articles, or this is real jealousy. So that's a reflection back on those people. And I've had more people like finally told me that. Like, I just didn't know that when I was kind of immersed in the work stuff and younger, of people saying, yeah, you're going to, there's obvious, there's jealousy, there's competition at work and these things. And I don't know, it's not the way I was. So, but again, those people, they have to deal with that. That's their own, that's their own stuff coming out. When they share that is an open door to that. They're insecure, that, they're jealous. And I was never showy with any of that stuff ever. So never. If they want something that seems another got it by chance, they get frustrated. Yeah, you're right. Kind of websites. Yep. Yeah. They're like, they get mad. So I should have got it, or I should have gotten the attention of a school board saying, good job on being on PBS or something like that, which is literally like all it was. It's not like we sat down at a school board meeting and watched the whole PBS thing. But yeah, it is people. And it was interesting too, like thinking back, some of those people continually bought, or at least, or whatever, expensive, showy vehicles, like very flashy vehicles. And then clothing and accessories. And the third would be trips. They would come in and say, over the weekend, I went to New York to Broadway to see this play with, my husband and daughter or something. It'd be like, okay, and I'd be like kind of cool. But then when it's like happening once a month, or, they've got a car, and then a year later, there's another very expensive decked out vehicle sitting out there. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. It's a 1-year lease, or what's going on here? Is it just because that person got a vehicle, or I don't know. But, and the thing is, I don't know. You're right. They get frustrated. So, and so someday I'll do a show too. Like, I'll make a show on thoughts on dealing with people who, I don't know, are negative influences, right? How to mitigate negative influence people. Some people that you're kind of forced to deal with, like if you're an employer and that's like your boss, or like, I think just in general, why these, to try to understand the psychology of why these people do the things that they do, because they're trying to blame things on you, right? They're trying to or not only that, or they're trying, or they'll get happiness if they can try to deflate something you've done. So I interfaced with a lot of those people, especially one of my employers. And so, yeah, so, you know, seems like they're chasing status. Yeah. And it was interesting too, because a lot of them had very crumbling things under the facade, like, stuff with, family issues or debt issues, or like they had hopped jobs a lot of times, and or they were like constantly applying for other jobs or so. It's just like you looked at these people and it's like you're not happy. You're, as long as they were always in this like perpetual race for something, like for status, I guess, they were okay. I guess they kind of sustained in that. They always had to be moving toward these tangible things. Um, I'll think that out. I think it's a good show, because a lot of us get impacted by that. And thankfully, I had someone who was objective and who was a member check, a peer, and told me, hey, this is what's actually going on. So, yeah. And these people are, they are jealous. They aren't, and they're not only jealous of you, they're like all with each other. They're, this kind of anger and these measured statements and this, how they position and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't get into all of that, but you kind of got to be aware of it when others around you aren't working in your best interest. Gunsight wrote, when someone knows they could have done it, but did not, and see another has done it succeed, they get really mad at themselves. I think so. Yeah. I people do. Yeah. And that's maybe where stuff like, sitting down and writing, an article and submitting it and having someone publish a article in a journal. Like, someone's like, oh, like I could have done that. I'm like, well, yeah, you would have actually though had to take some time to sit down and do some other things, or not bench flick Netflix, or whatever else you were doing, and do this. So it's kind of like a thing with the book. Like, both books took a lot of time, and the Velocity of Information, I would say, took 3,000 hours from start to finish, from outlines to writing to edits to everything, to bring that to fruition. So I don't have any haters yet on that, but yeah, I mean, for someone to look at that and say, oh, this whatever book, I'm like, yeah, first of all, hopefully you'll be happy for me. And I think this contributes a lot to people in the knowledge base, but you could do a book. I mean, go ahead, do an author proposal, sit down, put in the time, listen, transcribe stuff out, find member checks, people who can help you with things. Like, it's a lot of time. And there's people, who have written, who understand that, like Joe Dolio and his, 3-book series. That's a lot of time to go in and do that. So when people are kind of like, well, I could have, or this, it's like, and just give it a try. I mean, understand, like, to the book process, both book processes, but especially Velocity of Information, was, I mean, it's an immense amount of time, and that goes into over so many months, and end notes, like 471 end notes, and to try to figure out how you're going to make all of it. But when it comes together at the end, it's really exciting and really worth it. And part of this journey is I'm glad I did it, but it's those people who are kind of like dismissive. So like, no, like, just appreciate, like, because if people don't do these types of things, go out there and write books or articles, or the JCs or VFW, or make informative videos, which, some of you, and you have your channels, like gun websites. If you're not contributing and informing, and then what's happening, right? You're not, it's not the betterment. We kind of talked about it earlier in the show. It's like, we don't have the JCs and the Lions Club and the Knights of Columbus and the Rotary like we did 20 years ago. Those are all kind of drifting away. So, like, be the people who contribute to the knowledge base, or, whether it be through your YouTube channel in real life, or organizations, or whatever it is. I mean, those are all choices that you make. So, and in making that choice, I'm going to make a choice to grab some lunch here. So thank you, Gun Websites, The Bit, Joe Dolia, our good friend Mictobis, Sassed Too Many, Vanessa, Carl, thank you so much. This is the Safety Doc, and thank you for watching Friday Face Validity. Take care, everybody. I'm going to bring that snow in here for an ending, because it won't be long. All right. Take care, everybody.